Are we live? Everyone has to say that every single time there's a stream, even though it's like obvious. But hey,
Are we live?
there you go. That's what I was waiting for.
Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna jump right into it pretty quickly because most of it's ready to go. Okay, so do an intro later. I'm just gonna start out. Oh, that's how I need to move that. Yeah. Now I'm ready. Okay. So first up in the show today is System 76 Pop! OS development update, where they announced that they're not going to be using Wayland by default. They're going to be using X due to concerns around many applications being unsupported and possible issues related to that.
And that makes a
Which
ton of
is
sense.
actually I think it doesn't.
Really?
Yeah, because if Ubuntu is um, the mainstream, and then everybody starts building packages for 1710, and then Pop! OS users want to use them while they depend on Wayland, if the package isn't or the application isn't built properly so it can work with both, you're going to run into issues.
I don't think that is as much a concern in the first version. I think everybody's going to make sure that they're going to be compatible early on, all of the early adopters. And in addition, System 76 is in a unique position of offering really good Premier support to everyone who buys their products. And they want to make sure they can provide them with consistent and relatively issue-free support for all of those people. And I think that's their main driver in ensuring long-term
you might be right
stability.
about the support, but keep in mind we're talking about support for issues that would potentially never exist if they would just continue shipping with Ubuntu.
Well, anybody who's going to wipe their disk, I don't even know how they handle that, but I think they want to make sure when you take it out of the box, turn it on, and don't modify it too much past there, that everything is going to continue to work. And when you contact them, they can tell you, here's how you fix X issue, instead of having to run the gambit of, well, it depends on what package you installed and what repos you installed that from and so forth.
Yeah, but that's the Snaps solution is going to alleviate a lot of hassle, but I don't think it's going to have any effect with the Wayland X issue. But it's
you
interesting.
Think the compatibility is there to the extent where it's just not going to be a problem?
No, I don't think it's going to be like much of a difference. I'm saying like in the sense of uh, Wayland is probably going to be a problem in the beginning. Like I'm kind of shocked that Ubuntu is doing Wayland by default. Not necessarily. I guess if you think about it, 1710 is kind of like it's not a beta, but it's sort of treated in the sense of like this is their test bed. It's ready for 1804. So maybe they're doing Wayland by default in a test to see if it will eventually turn into a ready to go thing for 1804.
Yeah, I actually, to be fair, I expected, especially with all the other changes in Ubuntu, I expected Canonical to wait until 1810 to do Wayland by default, so they have all the time in the world to make sure it works properly before the next LTS.
Well, what other major distros are shipping with it coming out?
Fedora ships with Wayland by default.
Yeah.
Also because of the GNOME usage.
Right. And that's probably a driving factor as well. I mean,
Yeah, I guess
for
with
Ubuntu to
Saki,
have
we
done.
would have to wait until 20.04 to have an LTS with a default Wayland desktop.
Yeah, it's better that they do it now in the sense of like getting ready for the LTS, because if they didn't, they'd be waiting a whole 2 more years before they did it again, before they actually put Wayland as the default. So if it works, then awesome. If not, maybe the cautionary tale of Pop! OS is a better approach. I don't know.
I don't know. I think Pop! OS is moving. It's going in the wrong direction. There's so many little issues with those little distros that you get just because they're kind of Ubuntu and kind of not.
These boutique company distros that are being made, like it seems to be every company that makes Linux hardware is now making their own OS.
Yeah, I mean, look at it even that way. There's a lot of scripts. You're echoing. There's a lot of scripts that still check for the distro name to check if the script is whatever the script is doing is compatible with your operating system. Which AMD's driver installer is one of them. So if the script might be compatible with your operating system, but it checks for distro name, and if it's not Ubuntu, it's going to fail. So imagine somebody trying to install Pop! OS on their desktop and happens to be running an AMD graphics card. That script isn't going to work. Mind you, like if you get a System76 machine with Pop! OS on it, I would expect everything to work flawlessly, and I guess this is their target audience.
The purpose of the distro is for that. So, and that's kind of interesting and kind of like, well, they are making ISOs available, so they are intending people to at least try it. So, I'm not sure like what their end goal is in sense of like adding extra effort and support on top of their already supporting hardware and stuff like that, and they're not going to have as much backing by Canonical, for example. So they actually had benefit of Canonical helping out with some issues, and now they're going to have still a little bit because of the base, but they're not going to be have as much. I don't know. And there's another interesting thing that they're doing that is potentially the same kind of issue is that they're not going to be using the Ubuntu software or the GNOME software stack. They're going to be using Elementary OS's App Center.
Which I'm actually not surprised because both Ubuntu's and GNOME's are kind of poor user experiences.
Have you tried the App Center from Elementary?
No, but as far as UX design, Elementary is king. So, I'm not going to I mean, it all looks pretty. I'm not saying it's all great, and works flawlessly. Elementary has its own issues, but it all looks pretty.
Yeah, that's true. Well, in that case, it's hard to argue with that. They do have good design for UX. So I guess we'll just see. I mean, overall, there could be a discussion on whether Pop! OS even needs to exist, or and also maybe Pop! OS should be changed to not have such a horrible name.
I don't think
I don't know. I don't know whose idea was it to put an exclamation mark
and an underscore in the middle of it.
Well, underscore I think is usable. Like you can live with an underscore, but you can have an exclamation mark in like any code that references your distro name.
Yeah, because it basically means this is not existent. Yeah.
Yeah, even in the if you go to their GitHub repo and look through the code, they don't use the exclamation mark in the code because, well, like you're asking for trouble. Even if you escape all of it, you're asking for trouble.
Yeah, in a way, it's kind of like you could say that Pop! OS is not an OS; it's a user experience.
I don't think that System 76 should make their own distro, really, for the same reasons that I don't enjoy buying an Android phone that has a custom ROM on it.
Oh, that's a very good point.
It's a good point, and also a very good segue to the next topic of Yola announces their new OS for phones, but seemingly one specific phone.
It's got the transitions.
There it is. Sony Xperia X.
What's the deal with them charging for it? Like, seriously?
Well, I think they've changed their approach in general. Like, I could be wrong, but it seems like some of the code, if not all of it, is going to be closed as well. So it seems like they're changing quite a bit of their business model. And how are you going to get people to convince people to use Sailfish X for a specific phone? It seems like it's just exclusive to this phone of Sony Xperia X, and then pay €50 in order to get it, or if it is available in the US, it would be like $70 or so. Like, how you can even?
It's not a bad business model.
What? It's a horrible. Okay, so
no, come on. Look at it this way. Let's just use Android as the example. Instead of Google making Android and then allowing Verizon to put their own ROM on there, they make the ROM. So they're now getting outsourced to make the ROM for custom phones in a way that the phone manufacturer wants, presumably with some kind of licensing fee built in there, as well as ensuring that the user experience is ideal. I think that's much better than saying it's open source, fork it yourself, and put as much bloatware as your customers can stand on there.
Well, okay, so let's just be clear about what Sailfish X, like what Yola is trying to sell you here with Sailfish X, because they have an operating system that works on one phone that doesn't even have proper supports. It is actually at worse state as far as hardware support than Ubuntu phone is right now. So it works on only one device, doesn't even support all of the hardware of that device, because I think Bluetooth and a couple of other things, Bluetooth and fingerprint sensors don't work on it.
Right.
Okay.
And other things.
With all of that, they're asking you to pay €50 for it so you can install it. So convince me to do that. And I'm the guy who wants a Linux phone, right? So convince me to do that rather than to just install some kind of a CyanogenMod fork on it.
Yeah, I mean, well, it is a Linux system. It's not really a fork of Android or anything. So, but I agree that the business model is questionable in the sense that they have this option where it only works on one particular device, seemingly, and that device does not come with the software at all. So you have to pay for that extra. Then you have to manually put it on. So they're already going to a very small audience of people who are willing to flash their device, but also people who are willing to pay to flash their device, while knowing that many things, even fundamental things like Bluetooth, don't even work. So, like, I mean, my question, Wolf, would be like, as far as like charging for the ROM, I see that could be a possibility. But like, is Yola going about it the right way?
I mean, I've never used it. I don't buy European phones really at all, so I don't know whether that's worth it at all. But I think it makes sense as an ongoing business model for you to ask for some kind of, I mean, I don't know even whether they're getting paid or not, but even from the end of controlling their OS, they're not going crazy out in the wild, putting entire new sections of the phone in like Bixby, or something else like that, where they're ripping out core functionality, replacing it with their own, that breaks the phone.
That's true.
You know how I would be willing to pay for something like this? If like, I hate dealing with ROMs. I like trying different operating systems and whatnot, but I hate dealing with ROMs and installation of operating systems on mobile devices. It's kind of a pain, and they'll probably make some, UI to make the, wrap all the scripts in some pretty user interface and make it as easy for people to install as possible. But I would actually, rather than pay for the ROM, I would pay. So when I buy the device, I set the address so it ships to them. They do all the installations, they make sure it all works, and they ship the device to me with Sailfish on it. And then I still paid for the device. They have, I can throw them a few bucks for installing it and getting it ready for me. And then I don't have to, I can just take it out of the box and start using it instead of, spending 2 days figuring out how to install it properly.
Yeah, that'd be something I'd be interested in. If they don't add an extra a huge markup to it because they did put the effort into putting it in. So it's like the phone itself is about $350 in the US, and I'd be willing to pay a little bit extra for that. But as far as like I'd be paying for this, that $50 if it was going towards providing me with a phone customized for this, and like in your suggestion, I think that would be interesting. I'd be more likely to be willing to consider it rather than like this in this particular situation where they want you to do it. I pretty much have no intention to even consider it at all.
Yeah, for me it almost looks. It looks to me like they were working on Sailfish for Sony Xperia, and that was their development device, and they ran out of money and are struggling to figure out a way on how to make a few bucks for the company before the end of the year, because I can see how these guys, and there's some really smart people working at Yola, so I don't see how they had a brainstorming session and this is the business model that was the best they could come up with. This is the best they could come up with what they had, and it's pretty bad.
Yeah, and it's pretty bad. In the chat room, Liberty Paul M said that installing different ROMs itself is a pain, thanks to the way OEMs lock them down. I don't bother rooting my phone anymore. I just disable the bloat. And that's pretty much how I feel about it as well. Just remove, like maybe root the phone so you can get rid of the terrible useless application that you're never going to use that the manufacturer put in. But as far as like completely flashing the ROM, I've kind of fallen out of that. So if they were to actually have done what your suggestion was to actually provide the phone as well, that's a possibility that I might consider. But at the same time, you could also say that how can you trust them? Do they have credibility? Because the last time they wanted to send out a device, they were doing that tablet crowdfunding campaign, which was successfully funded, and they got the money, but they didn't think it through and didn't have enough money. So they spent money and ended up just losing it to the point where their backers didn't get a tablet and didn't get their money back. Like they got like half of their money back. So there are some people who, if you look in the comments of various topics for like Reddit, some people were saying that, yeah, it's great and all that you have this new software on this particular phone, but hey, could I have my $130 back that you owe me? Like, so, I don't know, even if they did make this phone by default with the application, with the OS built into it, I don't know if I'd even still trust that possibility anyway, just because of the track record of the company. But I could be just overreacting, so I suppose.
What if it ran Plasma?
Okay, now I'm tempted.
What's the Libre phone 5 or whatever it's called?
The good transition.
Hey, you're not supposed to point it out, man.
Right.
We were sneaking
Right,
it in there.
be more professional. Yeah, Librem 5 from Purism is a phone that's being announced for a crowdfunding. Speaking of crowdsourcing or crowdfunding some a project, the phone has been said that it's going to cost like $600 or $599, and that it's going to be using the Pure OS Debian derivative. So this could be interesting. And we don't really have any confirmation about what the specs of the phone are going to be, but they have said that they're planning on at least 3 gigs of RAM, a 5-inch touchscreen, 32 gigs of storage, plus a micro SD slot. So I don't know. It could be interesting. And what do you guys think about it?
It looks ugly. That's
That's exactly what I thought. It's this giant square brick.
Very iPad-y.
Yeah, it's weird that this is a mock-up of the device too, and it's a terrible mock-up. It looks uncomfortable to hold to me.
Yeah, it looks kind of wide, doesn't it?
Yeah, because it doesn't have to that looks like either it's really short, or it's like making it 5 inches looks. It doesn't seem like it seems like that would be like a phablet size, like the way it's shaped. But I don't know. It's an interesting. I want it to happen because like I really do want a phone that is Linux based. I don't really care if it's like floss oriented or whatever, but that's an extra bonus, and I do like that. But
we
kind
of have a problem as a community with Linux phones, because whenever somebody comes up with one, there's people like us saying that they're doing it wrong.
I mean, fair enough. Like, we'll put up
because we're about to have a conversation how they should go with Plasma.
Well, I mean, not necessarily Plasma. I mean, that I would agree that they should at least look into it. But like, as far as like overall, GNOME could work. I mean, not really. GNOME itself couldn't work. But if you look at it, GNOME is kind of similar in the UI aspects of WebOS. Just saying. So it could be, using that kind of an approach. But to put a positive spin and not to.
If it was GNOME based, you'd have to install the phone application from the App Store first.
Well, I mean, it is GNOME based. They've shown that it's going to be GNOME based. So it'll come with a bare bones, and it won't have a dialer or a messaging app.
Yeah, you'll have a blank screen and a clock, and that's it.
And you don't even. Anyway, what is cool? They are doing some cool things. Like they're doing a mobile baseband that is separated from the system, and that's kind of like the biggest problem with these new devices is that the baseband locks down the software and firmware to individual opens like the operating system itself. So like that's why ROMs are only specific to each phone. So they're kind of doing it in a sense that by having this baseband with a ROM built-in firmware, you could theoretically have any distro work on it. So not just their Pure OS, you could have anything. Like you could have Plasma Mobile if you wanted to. You could have Arch Linux if you wanted to for some reason. Like you could have all kinds of things, and it shouldn't be that much of a change. They'd have to change the UI a lot, but overall, like the core of the OS wouldn't have to change that much, and that seems incredibly interesting.
Well, whatever you install on it has to have support on for the hardware, right? Which is kind of an issue unless they make it in such a way where you can actually just swap the environment. I don't want to call it a desktop environment, but the phone environment. And so you swap the GNOME stuff for Plasma and just keep the same operating system and kernel.
I wouldn't mind that. I do think that these guys need to be sharing more resources, especially since nobody's brought anything to market at this point. I guess technically things have existed, but nothing has seen. Yeah, exactly. Nothing has seen wide adoption, or I guess ongoing adoption. Everybody has eventually backed out that we've seen so far, get deep into it. So I would like to see some of these projects combine resources on some parts of their design, and maybe the underlying base is a good place to start. Have a Debian of Linux phones OSs, so everybody can just base it off of some universal stripped down, barely working base, and then put some customization on top of it.
Barely working base, right?
Did I say barely working? I meant rock solid, stable, minimalist. Yeah.
So there are interesting things that they're doing. They partnered with Matrix.org to set up end-to-end encryption with and decentralized communication with the dialer and the messaging app. Like how exactly that's going to work
cool to
through
see.
SMS, I have no idea, but it sounds incredibly interesting.
Yeah, I've used a couple of SMS apps over the years that were net encrypted, and it definitely can be made working. Integration with the existing applications, though, is a really good idea. Getting it built into the Matrix network would be a huge win for both, I think.
Yeah.
Because you could even use the Matrix protocol to do their or not MMS, but like multiple people in the same chat, and have support for more things than just photos or just text. You could do videos and all that other stuff in there too.
And the bridging that they're going to do, that they have with like IRC, could even work together. That'd be interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
So there's another thing I want to talk about as far as Purism goes. Like that creates the biggest question is it possible for Purism to succeed where Canonical failed?
Yeah, and I don't think so. I think that they get a lot of good ideas. We get it barely off the ground, and then they realize that it costs a lot of money to stay in this market and play that game. A lot more so than a lot of the partnerships, more so than just expecting people to have a desktop at home that they know how to wipe.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I would say that it I don't know. It seems like an interesting approach, and I do think that they have a better chance solely because that they're going for a phone specifically and not trying to like support a ton of different phones, so that it makes it a lot easier, like a narrower approach. So I guess that maybe might help them.
Yeah. Canonical.
Well, I mean, they didn't really technically try. I guess in this case they haven't technically tried either. So like maybe, who knows? At this point, until the campaign is fully
Ubuntu Touch, it only supported like 6 or 7 phones officially. Everything else was a community made working, somewhat working. 1+1 support and so forth.
I think their eventual final support was like 10 phones. But yeah, I don't think they ever actually officially supported the Nexus 5 either. But it would be interesting, like if Purism made partnerships with Plasma Mobile or like a partnership with a Halium project to have this, as on top of the baseband separation, they could have like a protocol and infrastructure library with Halium to have a lot of mobile devices. If there was this like a partnership with the whole community of mobile Linux, then it could be an incredibly useful thing. And if that were to happen, I think it'd be possible for them to actually succeed because they have a lot more backing rather than just, potential backers and people who want it to happen, but they don't have any like that much involvement with the community like Ubuntu had. I don't know. So, Farron in the chat has said that people are going to see Plasma Phone and then think, yuck, it's badly sized. And I don't think that's necessarily true because if you've seen the Plasma Mobile interfaces, like, it does look actually pretty decent. Like they have done a lot of effort to make it feel like a mobile OS, even though it's still in like a beta.
Yeah, and you got to have some allowances for 1.0 as well.
Yeah, especially.
Just get it working, get it out the door. Version 2.0 will have massive user improvements, I'm sure, and every iteration thereafter will as well. I think the focus should not be on design initially and instead on functionality.
Yeah.
Get a working, solid product out the door. We can fix the large, oversized buttons later.
That's true. Also, Liberty Paul had a good point. If you can pick holes in every phone OEM anyway. So if Samsung has a ton of bloat, um, HTC has been kind of going. They used to have incredibly good hardware, and then they kind of like lowered that standard recently, in recent years anyway. So I guess we should be more a little optimistic, because Purism could have issues and are likely going to have issues because of just the space they're trying to get into. But the current champions in that space are also having issues in certain cases. So maybe if instead of having like a big flagship approach where there's this huge influx of phones coming out, if they just focus on one individual phone and one individual OS, that it could be a lot more seamless. So I don't know.
Yeah, but everybody tries to do that a little bit, and then it loses steam because you only end up having a few thousand users, and you don't end up with the community fan base support because you don't have. I mean, I think personally that was one of Ubuntu Touch's problems. I would love to have tested that for them. I would love to have run it every day, and I did install it a couple of times, and every time LT didn't work on my my Nexus 5. And then I installed on my OnePlus One, and again, Wi-Fi didn't work, or Wi-Fi did, but LTE and 3G did not. And I don't know if that was, what the support of the hardware or where in there that was broken. But again and again, they tried to just get it working on one phone, and then they don't get the entire Linux fan base using it, and then they lose steam.
But I mean, it's true. A lot of the Linux users basically do want to like flash their phones they already have, or flash a spare phone. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like
Firefox,
it's hard
Firefox phones were at a price point where I could justify just buying one. At first, I think you did, right?
Well, when I bought my Firefox phone, I paid $80 for it. I think that's a decent price for a phone that was essentially a. Well, it was a decent smartphone. Actually, I've used it for a while, and I've used it for a month as my primary device, just to report some bugs and try it out. And I think you could not do better for $80. Actually, there are phones that were more expensive on the market at the time that run Android that didn't perform nearly as well because the hardware wasn't much better, but Android just didn't run well on it.
Yeah. So I mean, maybe if they had something that was at a low end price point that I could totally justify having a second phone.
Well, I think the most expensive Firefox phone was $200.
Yeah, the Flame. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was about I think it was like $250 at the most when it had the higher version. But
maybe they. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's fine. Go ahead.
Maybe they need to send out dev kits or have a kind of working or I guess officially supported low end. Maybe it's not the prettiest phone. Maybe it's a little bit blockier than it needs to be than their final designs are. But make that at a low price point and available to the entire fan base so that we can say, hey, I guess I'm not going to be running this on my OnePlus 5, but I'll buy this, $150 phone and I will be able to use Plasma Phone or whatever other one I want to flash onto it. And then everybody kind of standardize around some set of hardware that everybody can develop on and get something out the door.
Yeah, that's true, but it also they have to be. Well, yeah, if they focus on a developer kit or a small phone as well as this like flagship, then it wouldn't be as much extra. But I mean, there would be an extra heartache as far as the baseband goes, because one of the most annoying things about development for a ROM is the baseband lockdown. So the fact that they're trying to approach it in a remove that layer, I don't know, that they'd have to remove the layer for the other phone too. So that could add it. That could be a huge undertaking even. So, well, in the chat room, someone is asking, Farron's asking if if we're optimistic that KDE might bring back convergence once the stable KDE Mobile has been released. And I would say that KDE already has a convergence concept built in. So like the KDE Connect utility and the overall infrastructure of KDE Connect is convergence, and it's a convergence in the way that it should be. You have like this OS that is for your computer and an OS for your phone, and they work seamlessly together without much effort. And I think that is the much better approach. So with Pure OS, maybe KDE Connect would have like a features to work with that phone and in a similar seamless way. Because I think the only reason I even use Android at this point is because KDE Connect is awesome.
Yeah, and maybe they need to extend that functionality a tiny bit and extend the integrations a tiny bit. But really, it's already there. It's already working.
Yeah. I mean, there are a few things I wish it could do, but it could do so many things that are already just fantastic that, it's it's hard to say anything bad about KDE Connect. Like the fact that it works on other distros and other DEs and everything is fantastic. So, like, KDE Connect is awesome. If you haven't tried it, go try it right now.
Yeah, you're missing out on life.
Exactly. So next up in the show is Chrome. Google has announced that Chrome OS is going to be for enterprise work. So you can have, as a company, you can. I'm not sure if you get this by default if you buy the computer as a company, or if you pay extra and also the device. More than likely the latter. But you can pay $50 per device per year and get 24/7 enterprise support and Microsoft Active Directory support. So this is a very interesting thing that could change the landscape of enterprise workstations, because it'll make everything kind of go into a cloud approach. And because I guess the biggest question would be if they do this and have the G Suite or Google Apps for Business or whatever they call it, if they make that integrated with this device structure, it would be even cheaper to do the Chrome Enterprise approach than it would be for just using the G Suite. So could that kind of deter people from using Linux in general because they have a cheaper and everything out of the box approach? They won't be able to use applications, of course, but in an enterprise level, do you even need to do that?
I think it's going to be a huge win for them. They already have raving fans in the student space, in the enterprise, or what's that called, education space. And for a lot of companies that are already using G Suite for some of their user base, this probably makes sense as hardware, where you don't really need anything outside of your browser to do 80-90% of what you do. And then maybe you have some kind of VDI or virtualized solution to do those few things that you actually need to jump into a Windows machine or a Windows server to do, in which case you're already maybe using remote desktop connection, which is just an extension.
Yeah, that's true.
My question is, can I recommend for somebody who's not very tech literate to buy a Chrome OS device, pay $50 a year to Google and call them to fix stuff instead of calling me?
So you're outsourcing it to Google.
Well, I mean, for $50 a year,
that's true.
You get 24/7 enterprise support. If you can't set up, your printer or your Wi-Fi to work with your laptop, call Google. Don't bother me.
I don't know. That's probably not the intended use case, and $50 is. I mean, I guess it's fine for 24/7 support, but I think you're probably going to get someone on the other end of the phone who is a IT administrator support, not, have you tried turning it off and on again support.
I
doubt they could probably do it.
There's
probably have
probably
that as well.
Yeah, there's going to be plenty of people who never used a computer before, then got given a Chrome OS device at work because it was so cheap.
Well, they do
Um,
claim that it's going to be enterprise support, so maybe it's not necessarily like workstations where the people who are having the turn it off and on again problems are contacting their IT department. The IT department is contacting Google. Like maybe that could be it.
no,
Also, there's a lot
it's
here you wouldn't use if you had an enterprise.
it wouldn't be per device then if that's how it worked.
Well, I mean, they're not saying that it's per device as far as like the support. Like the support is like whatever. It's just per device to get all the other stuff. So they haven't really gone into like details of it, like how the support is handled and everything, because they just recently announced it. So it's funny enough this week, and so it's still up in the air as far as like how this is going to work. I just think that there's potential that this could be good for the enterprise in general because they could save a lot of money, but in a way it's also kind of bad for Linux desktop because well they can already save a lot of money with Linux, but they have to put a lot more effort in, and this kind of like removes some of that effort for their IT department.
I think Linux is not really in competition with Chrome OS. I think they target different audiences. Like people who are using Chrome OS devices would not be, using Linux. Like they wouldn't be using Ubuntu if Chrome OS didn't exist.
Yeah, that's true. Let's see. Paul Turner asked in the chat room, how secure would it be to use something like this? They're already using, a lot of businesses are already using Office 365 or, the quote unquote cloud. So I would kind of respond to that saying that I don't think this is an issue of security because everything's like, they don't seem to be offering cloud-based, like self-hosted cloud-based. So security-wise, they already have everything anyway. If you were to deploy this in your company, you would essentially just be handing everything like every kind of data that you might create or utilize to Google.
Well, there's two parts of the security though. There's the cloud part, which you're directly addressing, and there's also the endpoint workstation part. And that has a lot of benefits when switching to Chrome OS from something like Windows, where there's a lot of escalation vulnerabilities out there where you use an outdated version of IE and it all of a sudden is running a system to run some exploit. So because you've got your Linux base there, it is a lot more secure from an endpoint perspective. Also, it looks like with this enterprise contract, they're finally starting to do some MDM integrations, mobile device management. For those of you who work at a company where you're forced to enroll into that, does allow for some interesting BYOD and security auditing and compliance checking and things like that. So in some ways, it could be more secure even than a Windows machine on a corporate network.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. Well, I mean, you could say pretty much any other option is more secure than a Windows machine.
For sure, but I mean, they're doing some things that are directly to that end or to that point.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, it is more secure, but at the same time, you're opening yourself up to a company that is completely upfront about tracking everything you do. So I don't know.
I mean, it's not necessarily that way for your business contracts, though. Allegedly, they're not scanning your materials. They're not using it for marketing purposes. So as of now, we have no lawsuits over it, so we can assume they're being pretty good about that. They don't. I mean, they have gotten in trouble in the past for scanning student emails and stuff like that, but I think that their system was just not designed to have separate silos. They built it for, all users will have this policy applied to them. So they didn't really carve out special exceptions when it was built for business and for education. So now that they've been doing that for a few years, I think that they built up a good amount of trust in the community. They've built up some good workflows around deploying to thousands of users at a time, which Windows does not have a great solution for whatsoever.
Yeah, that's true.
And most Linux distributions don't even have that great a solution. All you can do is something like Kickstart, and then you can kind of get it mostly working through PXE booting and things like that. But the ability to just ship out an MDM managed machine directly from Google to someone's doorstep, they open it up, they hit a URL, and they're enrolled, and they can use their work logon from there forward is is pretty seamless and it's a pretty compelling switchover. And it all runs on Linux, and it all runs on Linux in the back end on the server side. It's too bad open source didn't get to this first before Google did, because they're going to make tons of money on it.
Well, I mean, there is a company who is handling the enterprise level and also the server structure and almost everything else, and that's Canonical. So let's go ahead and talk about the Canonical corner of this episode is about the Ubuntu 17.10 feature freeze that just started and all of the interesting stuff that came before the freeze was announced, which would be the support for captive portals. Which is, if you're not aware, if anybody who's listening is not aware, the captive portal is like those things you go to a hotel or an airport, and before you can get on the internet, you have to like log in or sign up for this ridiculous, annoying web page. But with Linux, there's some of an issue is captive portals don't always have support for Linux, so there's not an automatic pop-up. So you're just like connected to the internet, but you're not really using it, and you can't. There's no like identifier that you have a captive portal. This is a support for popping up and letting you know, hey, you just connected to a Wi-Fi network or something like has a captive portal on it. Do you want to go through with it? So that's going to solve a lot of issues I've seen in people who travel with Linux.
Yeah, it's a win. Definitely something that was causing issues for a lot of people, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's also been updates to the printing support in Ubuntu 17.10 that's going to be improving pretty much any printer that has support for like network printing, such as like Wi-Fi Direct or like IPP Everywhere, would be able to support just plug and play automatic support in 17.10. So that's a nice thing to have, because one of the most frustrating things with computers of any kind ever is definitely printing, and so much so I don't even have a printer anymore.
Yeah, same. But Ubuntu was one of the first distros that had support for my printer, and everything worked 100% flawlessly. On Windows, it's still such a struggle to get this working. So I'm really glad that Linux is continuing to stay on the forefront of making this work automatically with as little pain as possible. Basically, anything that your phone can print to is going to work.
Yeah, that is.
Which is so exactly. Easy. It's really nice.
The fact that you can you can even have your phone print to your printer that's connected to your network. So that's a really cool option. Mm-hmm. The next step, probably the most important thing about this week's news for Ubuntu 17.10 is the support for indicator applets that Ubuntu has declared that they're going to make sure that is supported by default out of the box. And this is contrary to what GNOME is doing, where GNOME is absolutely completely just removing the system tray in every way because reasons. They said in a quote from GNOME was, "The legacy tray introduced as a part of the notification redesign in 3.16 was meant to be a stopgap to encourage applications to move away from the concept of status icons or system tray. It hasn't really done anything except for getting in the way. I wonder why. Given that the large majority of apps that still make use of the status icons work perfectly fine without them, we've decided to just drop it, but just drop this unloved bit of UI altogether." And while well, go ahead.
It's the only barely usable feature of the default GNOME experience that I actually like, is I can tell when Nextcloud client is actually running, and I can open it to get a status of what syncing.
Yeah, and
it's I don't understand why they would remove that at all.
Well, they seem to hate the system tray in every concept, like as far as like regardless
never
of
gotten in the way.
Well, I mean, I don't think that this is actually what they meant. I think they just don't like the system tray. But when I was reading this and when I was recording the show, the recorded show, I kind of thought of something like maybe they're not necessarily. This is not what they mean, but this is how I interpret it, as the unloved bit of UI isn't necessarily the system tray. Well, to them, it probably is. I think that the unloved part applies to the incredibly awful slide-out system tray that they made in 3.16. that it's in the bottom
I
left
actually
corner.
don't mind that over a static one, to be honest.
Well, I mean, I like the way that Plasma does it, where you can just have it display or not display, but still be available when you want it. Like if GNOME did the display, like the slide out was at the top right, and it just kind of did the exact same thing, but just right underneath the tray, that would be fine. I wouldn't be annoyed by it, and it would be in where I expected and where most people would expect it. But the fact that it's the exact opposite corner of where you want it to be, that I can believe that that's unloved.
It's hashtag GNOME or hashtag Plasma does it better, right? Trending on Twitter.
I think the issue here is that GNOME said, okay, this is kind of bad. And like, I would be willing to give them that this tray doesn't really fit all that well with the rest of the workflow of GNOME Shell, but they haven't really provided a good alternative to it.
Their alternative is figure it out yourself.
Yeah, so if you're not going to provide a solution, it's removing functionality is just kind of a horrible idea.
Yeah, I mean the removing with no alternative other than just we don't like it, we're going to get rid of it. Like I think that's kind of an absurd thing to do. So they said that 326 is the one that's going to be removed. So to be fair, there are extensions that provide system trace still. So like Type Icons Plus and stuff like that will still provide that ability. But the fact that you, like every single time, every new release of GNOME, there's always something that goes, well, they're just making the default even worse than it already is. And no one uses the default I've seen. Like everyone I've ever talked to at least installs one extension, and usually it's the Top Icons Plus. So, like, the unloved bit is the GNOME is unloving it, I guess, whereas the majority of the community typically wants to have it. Like as far as UI goes, unless the icon fits your theme, it would look kind of bad. But other systems are compensating that approach with just like having an overlay that automatically changes the color of the icon, and that is a pretty cool idea.
I don't mind for that reason. I don't mind the auto hide feature.
Yeah, but well, I mean, you could have it auto hide on the top right instead of the bottom left, like.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. I'm used to it being at the bottom now. It never bothered me, and for the day and a half or so, a year that I install.
It never bothered me because I never bothered with using it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's the only part of the OS that makes sense, that I can reliably find and open.
Yeah, so
everything else is a total crapshoot. When
I did use GNOME for a very long time, that was one of the things I hated the most, is having to remove that just because it was so worthless. But I can understand why some people would like the slide out aspect. I just would prefer it to be, somewhere that actually makes sense and not just the bottom left.
Yeah, I can get on board with that.
So they're going to make, like, similar to the Dash to Dock fork that they're doing. They're doing another fork of a extension that has the interesting name, KStatus Notifier Item / App Indicator extension. So
rolls right off the top.
Exactly, it's perfect. And I assume the K part is the KDE thing, but it's interesting they're using this instead of forking Top Icons. It seems like they think this works better and integrated more into the desktop. So that's pretty cool. And they're doing the same thing that Dash to Dock with the light fork instead of like a full fork. So they're just doing like the fundamentals that they want. And if you want to change it to something else, you can. So speaking of companies and distros making big declarations, SUSE came out this week to say that they are completely committed to Btrfs file system. And you might be wondering, if you're not keeping up with the news, why would they care? Well, if you're watching the show, that's kind of the point, I suppose. But why would they care to point out that the file system they're using, they're still committed to it? And that's because Red Hat announced a couple weeks ago that they are going to not use ButterFS anymore, and they're going to use their own project called the Stratus or Stratus project, which is kind of like a hybrid model between copy on write and the traditional file systems. So SUSE comes out and says that we're committed to ButterFS as the default file system for SUSE Linux Enterprise and beyond. And this just kind of brought up a topic to me that is really interesting in the way the community treats various companies that support Linux and open source. If you look at what SUSE does, they kind of ignore SUSE in how they're in their announcements. Like SUSE can do something incredibly awesome, like OpenQA or the cyclical development of the OpenSUSE with the SLE packages all integrated. Like they could do something like that, and for the majority of the time, they're kind of ignored. I mean, they kind of get some press, but they get ignored. Whereas with Red Hat, pretty much no matter what they do, people just hang on their every word. Even if, like this situation, they're like one of the lowest contributors to ButterFS, so them leaving ButterFS doesn't really affect ButterFS at all. Like it's a nothing story, but people blow up and act about, oh, is ButterFS doomed? Just because Red Hat is not going to be doing it anymore. So it's interesting that Red Hat has this I don't know, they're sitting on this pedestal that if they do something that is seemingly insignificant, people act like it's a big deal. And if they do something that's kind of seemingly sketchy, people just ignore it and move on. Whereas other companies either completely get ignored or just get tons of hate. Like Canonical gets tons of hate, even if they do something that's super useful to the community, like switching to GNOME and contributing to the open source desktop environment that people have been wanting them to do for years, and then just, oh, they do it, and now, well, can we trust them because they've changed their opinion of how they're doing everything? So to me, it's an interesting situation where one company gets like outright love, even if they have like a public partnership with Microsoft for multiple years. That gets ignored, and they do things that are like not invented here, and they don't get any like kind of backlash for doing so. But someone else does what the community wants, and they just get attacked.
Red Hat has a lot of leeway with me. Their bottom line is their driving reason for doing everything. So when they say that our bottom line doesn't think that ButterFS is going to be the long-term file system, to me that says a lot about the research they've done, about where they think the status of that project is right now, and that they're not willing to continue looking at shipping it as their default for their hundreds of thousands or more likely millions of customers, and putting their entire company on the line for it. Yeah,
but they're also not putting their company on the line for any of the things that already exist that are pretty good. ZFS is pretty good.
No, they're not. When you see something dying, you distance yourself from it. And I don't know, and I'm not saying that that's the case with ButterFS. In fact, I have, for the first time, I actually have a system that's running on it, and it seems completely fine.
Anyone who uses OpenSUSE at all is using ButterFS and have been for years. And
right.
So like ButterFS is not problematic, and it really, like, there are certain things that don't work that well, but like RAID 5 and 6 aren't commonly used anyway. So like, while that's still something they need to work on, it's not like catastrophic. But like, it's not like by them leaving, it automatically means that they spent time to say that this is bad, and they're gonna use something else. Like, they're making their own. Like, they're making their own file system.
Yeah.
Yet, so like, you can guarantee that they don't have a lot of effort into it, because usually when they announce something, they've been developing it for like 2-3 years maybe. Whereas XFS has been around for 20 plus years. ZFS has also been around for like 20 plus years, and they chose to not do either one of those.
Yeah, I don't really know why they didn't go with ZFS, to be honest. I feel like that's what we should be standardizing around right now. But
well, it's probably a licensing
is there any reason to like standardize around file systems?
Yes.
Why?
I mean, I can't think of any, but I'm sure there are.
Well, I
No,
mean,
you're right. It's probably good that there are options, but when you want a enterprise, like if you want a quote unquote advanced file system, you want something that's been tried and tested in a number of situations. So I feel like they could be fairly comfortable shipping ZFS.
I think to an extent Red Hat is looking for a new edge, right? Because why, if you're an experienced Linux user and you don't need the enterprise support of Red Hat, why wouldn't you just install CentOS or even Ubuntu, right? So
yeah.
I think part of it might be they're looking to give themselves a competitive edge on the market.
They're trying to get
And
their competitive
They're
edge,
looking to
but
separate themselves.
And I think, as far as like the community reaction goes, I think to an extent it's who cares about different projects, right? Because Ubuntu, the guys you hear talking online about what Ubuntu's doing are mostly desktop users, right? The for OpenSUSE, even though SUSE has enterprise, SUSE has plenty of deployments in the field. The guys that you hear talking about it online and posting comments is the loud minority of OpenSUSE desktop users, and Red Hat doesn't have that desktop user base to complain about what they do online and
well, yeah, they
criticizing
do.
their every move.
Rails specifically, no, but they do have Fedora.
Well, yeah, but that's different.
I mean,
I feel like
it's
there's
funded and
more
backed by Red Hat,
separation.
so
Yes, it is. But I feel like there's more separation between Fedora and Red Hat than there is between Ubuntu Desktop and Ubuntu Server or OpenSUSE and Enterprise SUSE.
I mean, I suppose so, but there is. I think there's actually the non-separation, the integration between SLE and OpenSUSE, Tumbleweed, and Leap is actually awesome because it means that there's more people working on a shared base. That whereas Fedora is even making their own separate server edition, so like they're sort of competing with their own backing. I mean, I think that's kind of a thing to talk about how that's a weird approach. Whereas if you have a big backing of a company, it make more sense to integrate with them and benefit from their work the way that SUSE is doing. But it is totally true that the OpenSUSE doesn't have that many people discussing what they're doing. But I think that's a shame, honestly. Like OpenSUSE does a lot of cool stuff like OpenQA, OBS, or the Open Build Service. There's not like there's another OBS that's really popular or anything. Or the cyclical development that they're doing. Like all of these things are great, and even Fedora uses OpenQA to do their testing, but they don't really talk about that. I mean, OpenSUSE doesn't even talk about that, and even Fedora doesn't really talk about it. Like they've been doing it for a little while, but they don't even talk about it. It's just interesting. But it is in the chat room. Andy Turfer pointed out that if Canonical did something like this, that like the not invented here syndrome kind of thing, not only like he said they would the most vocal people within the community would be yelling about it, and I wouldn't think they'd be yelling. I think they would like lose their minds, like this file system is not good enough for you, and that they would just attack them. Because they do anything at these days, they just get attacked, even if what they're doing is good. So it's just interesting to me that Canonical gets attacked for these things. And for example, they started the Windows subsystem for Linux development with Microsoft, or the Linux subsystem from I don't know whatever. They start that, and they get attacked for it. But they're hands off now. They don't really work on it. But at the same time, Red Hat has a direct partnership to getting Windows Server deployment containers in Red Hat OpenShift, and they've been doing it for a couple years. So they have a direct partnership, and the partnership they have for .NET, like they have.
Oh yeah, that just
like an
announced
absolute connection.
officially.
Yeah, and they don't get any backlash at all. It's just a weird situation how the community treats these various companies instead of appreciating the work they do. Like, I'm not even saying that Microsoft this partnership is bad. I'm not even saying that's bad. Like, it could be good for like enterprise grade stuff. It's just when they do something at all, that it just ignored. It gets ignored, or even praised.
I think it's a prerequisite for most of their customers. And again, they're following their wallet when their customers tell them that I would love to deploy this, but it needs to have, Server 2016 support, then, or else my boss won't sign off on it, then they're going to do it. And for the same reason, I don't think it's necessarily bad that there's no Linux subsystem for Windows, because it allows Linux applications to code against that and allows people to get used to transitioning more before they dump the platform.
Yeah,
I think Windows themselves recognizes that their company's dying as an operating system company. They got to switch to a services company, and some areas of their business are trying to do that. And then hopefully they will die in fire.
Well, I agree that would be fantastic, but in the sense, my point was mostly not necessarily that what they're doing is bad, that the decisions they are making are bad for their company or anything. I don't mean saying that the Stratus project is a bad thing, that they're not using Btrfs. That would be perfectly great for them and their customers. It's the fact the response from the community is just disappointing, I guess. That when they say something that they're going to not use something that they've already said that they're not going to use, like they've already kind of said that they're not putting much effort into it, because as you look at the contribution history of Btrfs, they are a very tiny aspect of it. So when this tiny aspect says I'm not going to use it anymore, everybody starts talking about how Btrfs is doomed and it's doomed to fail, and Red Hat's leaving it, so it automatically means it's terrible and all this other stuff. But that it's an insignificant portion, and yet people still freak out. Whereas someone else does something really good and they freak out in the opposite direction. It's just the community is kind of confusing in that sense, that I would hope that people would reflect the way they treat the companies that are in this space, and maybe give them a little bit of benefit of the doubt, because they seem to only do that to one company. But speaking of things that the community doesn't give benefit of the doubt, Electron, Stacer, the Stacer application was a system monitor and like a CCleaner application, like combination thing, has decided to remove Electron from their application and are now using C++ the development for the stack. They're claiming that it consumes 10 times less resources than Electron, which is probably true. And I think the really cool thing about it is that they somehow kept the responsive design in the C++. So I have no idea what toolkit they're using, but maybe it's like a custom, unique thing that they're doing. I'm not sure, but it's another topic where the community just, without really giving it a shot, giving it a chance, they just bash on Electron. And to be fair, there are some Electron apps that are absolutely awful and ridiculous.
Like Discord. As we talk about Discord.
Yeah. So speaking of skipping over something, there's applications like Jump FM, which is a file manager for Linux, or really multiple platforms that use Electron, and it's not that good. It's heavy, and it's like 200 megs versus like the 20 megs that Dolphin uses or Nautilus uses. It's just, I don't know, like things like this, like the Electron, it has a bad rap. It's actually good. There are some applications that are fantastic, which I'm not going to go into a list here. Maybe I'll make a video that's specifically like why Electron is not so bad. But I think Stacer's decision here was fantastic because a system monitor or a system cleaner should probably not be based in Electron.
I tend to agree with you. It very much comes down for me to what the application is meant to do. Some applications don't make sense in that abstracted away from the base, and you pay penalties for it, which is what they're talking about with their 10 times resource utilization cleanups.
Right, but as far as go ahead.
I just want to throw it in there. I have the quick browse of the Stacer repo, and it looks like they're using Qt. I'm trying to find out whether they just replaced their Electron container with Qt WebKit, which would be the quick and easy way to do it, or whether they redid their entire UI.
Yeah. I couldn't find any reference to Qt in their source code, but I didn't spend a ton of time looking.
It's fairly obvious that their code is a Qt Creator project, just from the files in there.
Yeah.
So if you've ever looked at it, or if you've ever worked in Qt Creator, it's pretty easy to tell. And I see app UI files in there, so it looks like they did at least a portion of their UI in XML. So it's just a Qt application which looks really good. And Qt is flexible enough so that you can make all the elements look however you want.
So you're saying you don't think it's a Qt web engine? It's just Qt based, like just straight up.
Yeah, I mean their main CPP file just includes Qt application and Qt debug. So
yeah, I mean that if they actually went to straight Qt support, that's interesting, especially how they kept their responsiveness. And the fact that they're still shipping as an app image is really cool. But that's interesting because I'm happy to see that they're switching out the Electron base. And normally I don't really think that Electron is a bad thing, but in this particular situation, Wolf, I agree that it depends on the purpose of the application. And finally this week we're going to talk about the HTC Vive VR headset has dropped in price with roughly about, depending on the currency you use, anywhere between $150 to $200 or whatever currency term. So the price for the USD version is $600.
Well, when are we going to get VR support in the Linux kernel? We got to make this happen.
Well, there is talk about it, and there is a driver being built, and Valve is definitely open for it, and there's a GitHub project for just that. As far as when it actually gets in the kernel, who knows?
I'm looking forward to the day that I don't need to buy new monitors. I just enable a new monitor in my headset.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. You could just, you could have
totally
so many spreadsheets.
All the spreadsheets.
Yeah, there's
I
problems
really
with that too.
What'd you say?
Sorry, go ahead.
There's problems with having the virtual monitors as well, because you can't really wear a headset for more than 3 hours without your whole thing steaming up with sweat.
Challenge accepted.
Yeah, I mean, I had the same problem when I first started wearing a headset on my head at all hours of the day and night. But after 2 years of that, you get used to it.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really tried a long term. I've only probably used the VR for 20 minutes at like a conference, but I've never put a long time. I think it might be a little disorienting in the beginning, but you could get used to it. Like just like anything, if you put enough effort into it, you could get used to it.
Yeah, I guess it doesn't really matter. I mean, I don't think I would actually use it 100% to replace my monitors for quite some time, but it dropping in price is going to become more popular, and they're going to have more units out there. We're going to get more development for it. Win-win-win.
Yeah, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
And more games and spreadsheets.
and spreadsheets, and that's actually the part that I'm looking forward to. I don't actually care that much about the game support. I want to see me having a working, Linux environment. I want all my terminals up. I want, connected to multiple servers, whatever, all through my headset, and not having to worry about who's around me.
Well, are you genuinely like looking forward to using production software inside of VR?
Yeah, I would be very interested in using that to completely replace my monitors and everything like that at work.
That would be interesting. Would it be kind of disorienting where you can't, I don't know, like all the peripherals, you can't see where anything is? Like,
oh no, I don't think I would. You spend 80% of your time with your hands just on your keyboard, right? You pretty much have memorized where my mouse is. They could do some things where you have sensors on your mouse and keyboard so that when you look down, you could see them again.
Oh, Remotion did something like that a while ago. So you could, when you look down, you can start seeing what you wanted to.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense.
So and it's like actually a holographic representation of what would be there. It just kind of like scans for you. Have like a webcam pointing at the stuff on your desk, and it just kind of like displays it in an overlay, like a HUD.
Yeah,
that'd be cool.
Does it just enable a camera essentially? Is that how that goes?
I mean, this is just theoretical, actually. But I would assume they have to have something that's tracking it. There could be like an infrared sensor that just like looks for things that are there. Not really infrared, I suppose. But
it detects where your hands are above a certain space, so then you'll be able to have a representation of you.
Like that Leap Motion detector.
Yeah, that with it.
Yeah.
I infinitely prefer this potential workflow to the demos I've seen of the HoloLens, where everybody just looks like they're rubbing a nipple in front of them all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have seen that too much, but in order to control UI on the screen, you have to reach out in front of you and pinch the air in order to click. It's really funny to watch more than one or two people do it at a time. You see a whole, circle of people all trying to do it. Yeah,
that does sound like any kind of utility that requires you to reach out and have a long extended arm. It just seems like a terrible idea. Like that's why I think that a touch screen on like a tablet or a phone is fantastic because it's just right there. But a touch screen on your laptop or your desktop monitor seems like a huge waste of money and effort because I'm not going to reach out 3 feet in front of me and try to touch the dock or something. Like it just seems like a waste of time.
Yeah.
Well, it's a waste of time, unless you're doing the AR instead of VR.
Yeah, I suppose. Well, the AR has a potential. I think AR has like a lot of potential. I think like VR and AR, like right now, they both have this like an equal amount of interest for me. But I think AR is more of a like out and about type of thing, going to stores and interacting with things in your physical space, whereas VR could give you like all kinds of possibilities. And like I understand that the VR is not something everybody's interested in, but I think it'd be really cool. And if they drop another $300, I might pick it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, the $600 price tag is still a little bit much for me. But if you think about it, there could be a possibility that the VR headset could introduce an experience where you could say, this is a Unix system. I know this. You just fly around in the file manager.
Oh, dear.
Yes, you will hack the Gibson.
Well, what's actually really awesome about that part of that movie, and I just recently figured it out, that's real. That UI interface is real. That you can like float around in your file manager. And like I forgot what it was, some kind of experimental file manager that you could use. And if VR comes about, I hope that at least some file manager implements that kind of feature because I want to waste a ton of time trying to find the blocks underneath the other blocks that have my files.
Yeah, I want to go through filing cabinets instead of browsing the folder tree. Yep, I
Sounds
also
about
have
as
that
close
desire.
as Electron.
Yeah, it sounds similar of wastefulness for Electron. Yeah. Well, anyway, that's the show for this week. Thanks for everyone coming in. We're probably going to keep the stream up a little bit, but if you have any response, comments, or feedback about the show, please put it in the chat or in the comments below when the live stream is posted to YouTube as a separate video, because there's going to be some editing for sure.
Hashtag Plasma does it better.
I will have to put that in now.
Censorship.
I will have to put that in now.
Keep it in there. I want to see it in the chat. Let's go. Or I mean in the comments. Everybody comment it.
I feel like Paradox.
Come back.
I feel like Paradox just wants all my money with Cities Skylines.
I knew you would want to see that again. Yeah, the green DLC. Oh, me.
You know what? I'm actually kind of glad that they're doing something like this, because it's very difficult to build a green city. Like, if you want a challenge in Cities Skylines and still get achievements, because if you actually change the game difficulty through a mod, you don't get achievements anymore. So if you want a challenging game in Cities Skylines and still get achievements, pick a winter map and try to build a green city without buildings all unlocked from the get-go. It's next to impossible, because you your only option to produce power is to make as many windmills as possible, which don't actually produce that much power, especially if there is no wind. Like, your power goes down significantly, and then at night your city uses a ton of power to generate heat. So you are screwed completely.
That's interesting. I mean, I haven't even looked at the concert. Have you played the concert one yet?
Well, I've played it. It's not really a major DLC. It just adds a few features. I think the mass transit one added much more interesting things. I started playing with it, and I built a new city, and I didn't get far enough yet to actually have a concert yet. But the new radio station that comes with it is nice.
Oh, that's cool. I haven't really played much with the DLCs, but the mass transit looked like it's something that should be not really a part of the game necessarily, but like something that's enhances the game extensively. Whereas like the concert thing is like, that's nice. I want to play with it.
Oh yeah, if you're going to get one DLC for Cities Skylines, to get mass transit,
yeah, for sure, and then the green one.
Yeah, we'll see how much stuff comes with it. It looks like it's going to be a major size DLC. The mass transit one adds a lot of cool new features. Like before your city is even big enough to unlock all the new buildings, it adds a few cool UI features. So for a load building, so if you have if you want to build nice grids and the guidelines for everything are kind of better with mass transit. So I think it's probably worth getting just for that.
Yeah, that's true. Did you see the other games that are going to be in the show? Oh, speaking of which, if people haven't, the stream, you might be wondering, is this the live stream? Is this the show? Or is this, like the same live stream we did last week and the show separate? Like, the show is separate, but I screwed up and didn't finish it on time, so it's going to be posted later today rather than before like it was supposed to be. But in the game, some of the games that were posted, I think, while I hate Minecraft because it looks boring and takes forever to play the game, the voxel turf, Minecraft GTA, hybrid thing, that looks awesome. Not necessarily graphics wise, but like as far as fun. It still looks terrible graphics wise.
Man, I'm glad you linked Stacer. I quite like it.
Yeah, Stacer's really good. I've talked
Especially
about it
for the
in
services management part of it.
Yeah, and also it's got startup features and startup management. It's got all kinds of stuff. Like it's actually when it was Electron, I was like, well, this is really cool, but I don't really want to promote it because it's so heavy. It was super heavy at the time, but now since they dropped it, it's really cool, and it's. I think it's the best part about it is that it's like BleachBit in the sense of CCleaner sort of approach, but it doesn't go as far as BleachBit does, and I think that's kind of a good idea as far as like BleachBit is like if you want to have like ultimate control and delete anything you want, really cool. Whereas Stacer is more of a limited approach where you don't have as much ability to delete. Whereas BleachBit you could just wreck your whole system if you wanted to, or if you didn't know what you were doing.
Yeah, I think the cleanup parts are probably not bad, especially if your package manager doesn't clean up your package caches.
Yeah, or if you forget to use like auto remove or auto clean and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know. Do the default installers even expose a functionality like that?
Not that I know of. No, I don't think they do.
Does Discover or I don't never seen
Discover
it in Discover, but I don't spend a lot of time in there at all. So
yeah, I know Discover doesn't. I don't think that GNOME software or Ubuntu software, even the fork, I don't think it does it either. I don't think any of them have the ability to like have auto cleaning tools and auto removing tools. Like they should, but I don't think they do. I know that some of them have like auto fixing of like sources. I think I've seen that before. So if you have like a source that's broken, it does like it's got a 404 error or something like that, you can say like auto fix the source list, and it will just like disable that particular one until you can go in and fix it. Like that's kind of a cool idea, but like I don't think anybody has like an auto remove or auto clean. So this is definitely a good thing that people should check out. I've talked about it before in the show, but like very limited approach because the show is super concise stuff. So it's like I just kind of mentioned like what it is and how it works and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But Stacer is a really, really interesting application. In the chat room, Ferris asked, mentioned something about like there's a joke about me talking about Mint. In other live streams I've done, even in last week's live stream, I kind of bash Mint a little bit, and then there's some streams I've been on where I was like, a part of the stream panel sort of thing, where I've bashed Mint before. So there's a kind of a meme, I suppose, where I'm like gonna talk crap about Mint. But Farron said about maybe talking about Mint and the Mint spins, such as Farron OS. And I said you might want me to not do that because just by being based on Mint, inherently everything wrong with Mint is wrong with your distro. But you could be based on Ubuntu and not have those issues. It's just, and I understand that, like, Cinnamon makes it Lint makes it easy if you want to use Cinnamon as your DE. It makes it easy to use Mint as the base. I just think that Mint is a terrible distro and does horrible things that are just misguided, anti-community, all kinds of things that basing on Mint is kind of asking for all of those to inherit all of those bad issues.
See, what I don't like about distros like Farron OS specifically is this kind of a notion that user friendliness is somehow tied into looking like Windows.
Yeah.
And feeling like Windows.
I agree. The whole Windows thing Like, while the traditional desktop of like the Windows paradigm, I understand that makes sense for some people. Like, it is good that we have that. It's just we shouldn't be focusing on it, and a lot of
I mean,
districts seem to focus.
I'd be willing, especially since I've been kind of thinking about either upgrading to a newer version of Ubuntu, you know, especially with 17.10 coming out relatively soon, or like changing distros completely. I'd be willing to do something for next week when we all just try, you know, living with some different distro and just see where we can take it and what we can do, and just, I know, review with some distro. And it could be for NOS. I'm willing to do anything really.
Okay. Yeah. That'd
As
be
long
fun.
as it's not gnome based, yeah.
So yeah. So how about let's do KDE Neon?
Yeah, let's do Neon. I'm totally open to reviewing that.
All right.
Yeah.
I think I've got that speech already prepared here.
Yeah.
I think we've been doing it for 2 weeks now.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we've kind of bragged about KDE and certain things. There are certain things that KDE does, and to be fair, there are also things that they do that are incredibly stupid and terrible. Like Discover, not necessarily stupid, but it is a great example of terrible. Like, it is pretty much unusable. And
I mean, in comparison to how good the rest of the software stack is, yeah, Discovery kind of looks bad.
yeah, there are certain things that, like, KWin is amazing. It's fantastic. Plasma is fantastic. And there are other projects that are not necessarily a part of KDE that are good. Like Latte Dock is really good. And it's really cool that KDE does have all these applications that are just undeniably awesome. And then they have Discover that's crap. That works like crap, looks like crap, is not even remotely near finished, and it's obvious. Like, maybe they have this concept in the future that it could be good. And as far as UI goes, it could be good because it's like, it looks like it's going to be potential to be responsive to like mobile, like Plasma Mobile and stuff like that. That's kind of a cool idea. Except right now, it's awful. And it should not be, it absolutely should not be provided by default by any KDE distro. Maybe if you add it in later, like a beta testing or something.
To be fair, though, the auto update functionality of it works quite well. If that's all you interact with it for, it's fine.
What do you mean?
I get a little notification on my system tray that says I have, 42 packages to update. I click update, it opens Discover and asks for my password, and then updates and closes.
That's true. I still use apt to do that most of the time, but I do like the notification. I do use that. I use the notification for sure. And the updates are typically seamless when I do it through Discover, but I've only done that a few times. Mainly because it doesn't give me any reference to like what is being updated.
Yes, it does. It shows you the entire list.
Oh, okay. Well, they changed that. That's good.
And then it shows you the download status of each as they download, although that's not really that useful to me. I guess I've never really had it. I've never used it to install a major update, so I've never had to read the status outputs if anything, any services need restarting or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But Ubuntu is generally pretty good about taking care of that for you. So
yeah, that's true. They're usually pretty good. Going back to the previous topic, Farron said that his OS was based on Ubuntu, but there was an issue between Ubuntu using Cinnamon and a virtual machine. I assume that's what VM is referring to. I understand that Cinnamon and Ubuntu could have issues. I would more suggest that maybe Cinnamon is not the best DE to use, mainly because it's old. It's a new DE that's also old, which is really confusing. But the GTK stack they use is pretty old. The applications that they're using, we're having there's these brand new applications that fit into our distro, and it's the X apps, and it's like they're all forks of really old things, and it's like, okay, I guess. So I mean, it's I don't think Cinnamon is that really worth bothering. You can get the same Windows-like feel. Mate is old. I mean, that's kind of their point, but fair. And so, yeah.
No, man, it looks old. It's the GTK 3 now. It's all
Yeah,
new.
that's true.
It just looks old.
It's fully been implemented as far as like upgraded and stuff. They've rewritten most of the stack almost. So almost all of it. I mean, so in that sense, yeah.
Okay, English Bob says KDE is for people who care more about the DM rather than being productive. I can be productive in KDE because KDE is just so good. Like KDE helps me when we need help doing something, and I can configure it to get out of my way when I need it out of my way, which is the flexibility that a lot of other desktop environments don't give me.
Yeah, that's true. And also the ability, the amazing aspects of you tell KDE Plasma to do something, and it does it and continues to do it and doesn't reset for some random reason.
Shocking new development.
Right? Like that's why I like Plasma. I tell it I want to do something specific. If an upgrade happens, it doesn't just change everything or break something. It just continues to work exactly how I said it. It's like that is why Plasma is one of the best DEs, if not the best, depending on perspective.
Okay, see, English Bob is now trolling because he's bringing up argument from like KDE 3 days now. Anyways, on an unrelated news, on me gaming news, I started modding, like not making mods, but installing mods for Morrowind on OpenMW, and it all works. I was kind of impressed. I think the current release of OpenMW is their 0.41 or 0.42. And yeah, it's just it's 042, and it just works so well. Like all the vanilla game just works. Mods, pretty much most of them work. The issue why some mods don't work is largely to the fact that OpenMW's engine for checking this game script is much more strict than original Morrowind was, and it won't allow crappy code to run.
Oh, that's interesting. So it just if it's a bad mod, for example, it just breaks it or doesn't allow it to break this game.
Yeah. So there's like I've looked into it, and it's actually kind of interesting. There's just plenty of bad code in mods that Morrowind would allow to execute, even though it produce issues and make the game run slow, even though it technically ran. And OpenMW guys didn't want to allow it, so their checks are much more strict. So that mod on OpenMW will just fail to run. Also, there's another issue is that some of the more complex Morrowind mods were exploiting bugs in the original Morrowind engine to run, which most of those bugs have been removed in OpenMW. They consider replicating some to allow the mods to run, or like in one way or another adding that compatibility, so at least the mods can be ported. But so currently those two categories of mods don't work, and third is mods that require third-party software.
That's interesting. It kind of sounds like the bugs in the hardware of like Nintendo 64 that Crash Bandicoot used. That makes it incredibly hard to emulate. So
you mean PlayStation?
Huh. In 64 version.
There was Crash Bandicoot for Nintendo 64.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
pretty sure there was.
That's
I
when it
c-
released. Yeah.
Yeah. So like there's the situations where they're like these bugs. So like if the engine has the bugs and you're making your feature with a bug, and then that bug is fixed, that's the fault of obviously the fault of the developer who made the mod. Yeah, Farron said it was for PS1. So maybe I'm referring to Banjo Kazooie. Maybe
Oh,
that's
I
it.
thought it was.
Oh yeah,
I thought it was
Banjo
from earlier.
Kazooie would be N64.
Yeah, I thought Crash was also in 64, but maybe it was just Banjo Kazooie that I'm thinking of. Like I'm pretty sure. I don't know. Maybe I'm not gonna make a definitive response. In the chat, Andy Turfer said that he's a VR developer. UE4. I'm not really sure what that means, unless it means like. I mean, I assume it means Unreal Engine, but he also said that it's not open source, but Unreal Engine is open source. So I don't know what UE4 means then.
Maybe what he means is what he's working on is not open source.
Oh, possibly. But the way he said it said UE4 not open source. Like, I don't know. Oh, okay. He's saying it's the licensing of Unreal is like where it's not open source. Because technically it's not like GPL. It is open source. It's just not like FOSS or open.
It's not
licensing.
free. It's source available.
Right. But there are some open source that you can kind of say that it is open source. It's just not open source philosophy. So it's like open code, I suppose. Because I think that's the term when you're describing open source, but not licensing wise. I'm not sure.
Non-free source available. I think it's the term people like to use.
That's not catchy. You can't do marketing with
It is.
non-free source
No,
available.
no. Well, I think that's the point.
Well,
just make it free. It's easier to market.
System 76 had a project called Beanbooks, which was basically the same situation, source available but not open, and they called it open code.
See, what's the difference between code? Source is just
code.
short for source code, right?
Yeah.
It's source code.
Yep.
So
It's
we call it
arbitrary
open
separation.
source.
Yeah. But, that's what branding and marketing's for. To make a claim that's not exactly accurate, but also kind of accurate. And still get away with it.
Well, I bought some software that was like that actually has licenses that give you the ability to give you access to the code, give you the access to the code of the like it was a game engine, so you had access to the code of the engine, access to the code of the tools that came with it, but you weren't allowed to publish it. But you could publish, like it was fairly relaxed, so you could publish your changes to the engine, like you could publish a diff for it on the games forums and nobody would care, but unless you would publish the entire engine.
Yeah, if you provided everything, that would be definitely.
Yeah, I think I paid it like $100 to it, and I didn't mind it because even though it wasn't free, the license was super permissive, and basically the only thing it prevented you from doing is publishing the entire source code of what you bought from them.
Well, there are some companies that the GTA Open 4, I think that was called. It was a mod engine for modding GTA, and they had restricted themselves and said we're not going to work on anything that's with GTA Online. All the mods are going to be local to you only. You cannot move them onto anywhere else. And even then, Rockstar seemed they didn't care for a while, and then Take-Two is like, hey, stop it. So all the work, 10 years of work, over GTA 4 and 5 is just, ripped away from them completely because of licensing.
Well, the same that happened. Well, no, it wasn't exactly the same because they kind of worked in the illegal IP theft kind of area, but because they didn't make any money on it, there wasn't really a way to take it to court because there was, they could
they would
damages.
legitimately win the court case. It would just cost them so much money that it would be
well.
ridiculous.
I was thinking this brought to my memory the thing with the Nostalrius or whatever it was called, the World of Warcraft server, where the guys set up a server for just the vanilla Warcraft with no expansions, and they got shut down.
Yeah.
Even though it must have taken they didn't make any money, they didn't have a company, they didn't charge anything, they didn't pay anybody anything except for paying for hosting, and they had servers running 24/7 for months, customer support and forums, everything you would expect from a professional MMO, except it was just done because they liked it.
Yeah, I mean that's true, but I'm saying the reason why they could get away with it in that case because there wasn't this legacy aspect, whereas in the case of Open4, they were around for so long and they seem to have the permission from Rockstar. Rockstar knew about it and talked to them about it, and then they were never outright said, "Hey, you have our permission." They just said, as long as it doesn't mess with it online, we don't really care, but we're not going to give you permission to do it because it's not up to us because the developers, it's up to the publisher for the distribution of it. So we can't really tell, but we don't really have a problem with it. And it was 10 years. So they have if you look at the different, there's probably 6 or 7 cases that you could use to say set precedent that they have the right to do it, and Rockstar and Take-Two can't do anything about it because they're not affecting the bottom line of the game. They're not affecting the online. They're not changing the way the game is played. They're not removing any story elements or anything like that. It's still the same game. It's just there's extra uselessness that can only be done locally, so it's not really hurting anything. And the fact that they're not providing the game with it also means that they're not breaking that law. And it also means that the people who are using it are willing to go the extra effort to install this mod. It's not like you download this thing and it just automatically attaches to your game. It does require some effort. So it's one of those things where that particular one is one of those things where that they legally have a lot of standing, and if they went to court, they would more than likely 90% win. There have been there's been lawyers who've talked about it openly and said, here's the arguments they could have made, and here's where they probably would have won. It would be very shocking if they didn't win. It's just it would cost $1 million minimum to fight it. Actually, I think it was $3 million to fight that particular type of case. So they were just well, we want to keep it, but we don't want to keep it that much. To go back to chat room, Farron said, did Mate fork GTK2 or GTK3 G-Edit? They forked the GTK2 version, and then they upgraded that Pluma from there to GTK3. So the version of Pluma and Pluma GTK3 and GTK3 are significantly different. And he did confirm that Banjo-Kazooie was probably what I was referring to. Well, fine. I'm maybe wrong. That's going to happen once a century. Yeah. There's just I don't know. I don't want to be the guy who hates on Mint all the time. It's just they do things that are just awful. So the fact that they have such a high standing in the community, it's just disappointing. Why did you fork GTK to gedit? I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't do that. But why would they fork it? Because GTK3 gedit didn't exist when they forked it? Yeah, as far back as 3.10, yeah. And when they forked it was way before 3.10. I mean, Mate itself was a fork within like 3 or 4 months of GNOME Shell. So they forked very quickly. Okay, why did they? Yeah. That's why I think like they did it before it was an option to have GTK3. And to be fair, the early days of GTK3 were atrocious. And the early days of GNOME 3 were equally atrocious. So the whole reason to fork would be to have applications and a toolkit that is stable and works and doesn't just completely obliterate support of individual applications or extensions prior to the version before it. Although what I just said makes no sense, because of the prior to the before. Like, that's a negative, but whatever. You know what I mean? I hope, anyway. I hope what I said made sense, somewhat.
Also, on an unrelated note that nobody cares about,
Morrowind.
somebody's actually, it's kind of related. Somebody's actually making an open Elder Scrolls arena. Because everybody loves the first two Elder Scrolls games so much.
Well, yeah, but when
they're horrible.
I've never played it. But like when you say arena, is it like a deathmatch?
No, okay, so here's the story of the game, since we're kind of rambling anyway. Guys at Bethesda, when they were making their Elder Scrolls game, or back then it was supposed to just be called Arena, and was supposed to be just like a deathmatch thing where you're a gladiator or something and you fight on the arena and that's it. And then they figured, there should be things to do from on the outside of the arena, and they kept adding buildings and building a city, and then the outside of the city. And apparently, they kind of decided that this is kind of pointless. This is not an arena game anymore about the gladiator. You have this whole world to explore, so let's make it a bigger thing. So it ended up being the Elder Scrolls arena. And went on to be this whole thing. So they went from having one arena to fight on to the biggest in-game world ever made to date. And no fast travel.
Fast travel's awesome though.
Well, yeah. So basically, they have Elder Scrolls Arena has, I think, as far as like the size comparison is half the size of well, let me Google it before I get it wrong. I think it's still today the biggest world in any game. So it's interesting from that. So Bethesda claims that the scale of the game is the size of Great Britain, around 229,848 square kilometers.
Wow, that's gigantic.
Wait, the actual size of the map is 161,600 kilometers squared.
That's still
So
gigantic.
there's 15,000 towns, cities, and villages.
Wow.
Yeah, it's ridiculous how big this game is. And as far as I know, it has no.
Oh, so you're saying the fast travel? It's like you're in a virtual world, like legitimate world that you have to traverse.
Yep.
Can you get a car at least, or a dragon?
Nope.
What? It's all walking?
I think it's all walking.
That sounds awful.
Can you?
I mean, even look at how much walking you have to do in Morrowind. And Morrowind even doesn't even have the entire province of Morrowind in it.
Yeah, but that you're not. All you're doing is convincing me more and more not to play that game.
Yeah, like you shouldn't play. You shouldn't play Elder Scrolls Arena or Daggerfall. Like they're bad games.
All right.
They may have been better when they came out. But right now they're just plain bad. That's all I have to say.
That makes sense. I'm okay with skipping it.
I mean,
games,
it took me a while to realize why everybody likes Morrowind so much.
Why is that?
Okay, like, do you want the short explanation or the long explanation of how I got
preferably to long?
The short one, please, and then you can tell Wolf later.
No, well, so here's the thing, though. I'm probably gonna log off and never see you ever again. So I really need to know right now.
Okay. Yeah. I'll give you the medium-sized explanation.
Thank you.
So most RPG games that you play, like even the very good ones like Baldur's Gate, they have this RPG engine in it, and they use it to tell the story, right? And that's basically it. Whereas RPG game systems were designed so that you can sit, with your friends around the table and make the story as you play. So that adaptation is kind of weird. And I think this is why the early RPG games don't hold up so well now, because there's a lot of trial and error in it. And eventually, everybody agreed that, okay, this replicating this experience of creating the story as you play doesn't really work. Let's use this RPG system to tell the story. And this is where games like Baldur's Gate, Icewind Dale, Skyrim come in. They all just use this system to tell the story, and you don't have the freedom of classic RPG. Morrowind is the only game that I've played so far that gets that make your own story right. Well, it's not right. It's as close as you can get to that. I'm just gonna run around and explore and kind of do my own thing.
Mm-hmm. Borderlands.
No,
the story is totally linear for sure.
It's not even that it's linear. It's you can spend 200 hours in Morrowind playing, doing quests, running around, exploring, creating stuff, and not even touch the main quest line.
You can do that in Borderlands too. There's tons of not completely ignore it. No, because
Yeah.
there's a ton of side quests, but they're all, unlocked after a certain amount of time.
Right? Yeah, you have to get to this point in the main story to unlock this area, right?
Yeah.
Whereas Morrowind doesn't have that. Morrowind has
the areas,
if you're
areas are always available. It's just you don't have a high enough level to get there, and you don't have enough quests to get to that level without doing the story.
See, in Morrowind, you do. There's just so much side quests and everything. Another thing I like about Morrowind is, like, normally in most, especially RPG games, it's like, oh, you want this really strong item, you probably need to finish this quest, and then the quest, whoever gave you this quest gives you this super strong item as a reward.
Yeah.
Or you find it along the way on this quest. Whereas Morrowind has this super complex crafting system where you can collect all the items that you need and practice all the skills that you need to make this super strong item, which means you'll have to travel around the whole island to find, to practice the skills, find people to train you in those skills, to get all the items you need. So effectively, you gave yourself the quest to give this item, and nobody told you, oh, go to talk to this guy and go to this guy and go to this place to find this item, find the resources. Like, you figured it out. You gave yourself the quest. And because of that, Morrowind
okay, that's
replicates this experience of classic RPG game.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
Like, I never got into it when Morrowind first came out, because before I tried Morrowind, I played Gothic, which, if you're into action RPGs and haven't tried Gothic, buy it right now, because it's an amazing game. Like, it's a really good RPG for the time it came out, and it was like early 2000, I think 2002 or 3, right around the same time Morrowind came out. And it's amazing today what they did. The engine is horrible and crashes a lot, and you literally, I don't know if the GOG version fixed it or not, but the original game, you literally couldn't finish it, because the ending, as soon as the video at the end of the game, like when you kill the final boss, stopped playing, the game would crash. The game didn't know that after this stops playing, you have to go, get you back to the main menu or something. The game would just crash. So it's horrible from like technical standpoint, but the game is really good. Like, the world is super small, but it's just jam-packed with everything. Every NPC has a day-night cycle, so NPCs don't just wait in one spot to give you the quest. The NPC will sleep at night, wake up in the morning, go to work. Then after work, we'll go hang out and get drunk or get high.
So you have
with
to catch
him
at like actual like specific times that would make sense to be there.
Yeah, like somebody will tell you, oh, go to this guy. He works in the mines, right?
Yeah.
So chances are, during like day hours when everybody's at work, he'll be in the mines. Or like somebody will tell, oh, go to this guy. He lives over there. So chances are, if you want to catch him, you have to go there in the evening when he's not at work.
So they tell you where to go. They just don't tell you, like, you have to figure out when to be there.
Yeah, like with some NPCs, like, you meet them and you learn, like, oh, this guy hangs out with these people a lot, which is, so that's cool.
Nice.
Like, there's not only NPCs have a day-night cycle, monsters have a day-night cycle too, and they actually behave like actual animals. So, like, let's say you have let's say there's like a creature that you walk by, it won't automatically attack you. Like, it will, do the thing, like, where it just makes noise, like a dog growls at you first and see if you back away. And if you back away, chances are it's not going to attack you.
That's pretty cool.
Or there's like there's like a little raptor-looking creatures that will chase you down pretty much always when they see you. They attack almost immediately. But if you kill a weaker creature while running away from them, they'll probably just gather around that weaker creature that you just killed and eat that instead of continuing to chase you.
Well, do they ever give up if you get far enough away?
Yeah, they'll give up if you get too far.
That's interesting. It's got a nice dynamic of.
Or another thing is like in almost any RPG, you can walk into anybody's house and run around, go upstairs where they can't see you, and just rob them out of everything they own, right?
Yep, and then they won't notice when you leave either.
Right.
Yeah. So in this game, if you walk into someone's house and you're not welcome there, they will immediately pull their weapon out and try to kick you out.
Nice.
That's what I do. You arrived.
Or like even if you are in a town and you took your if you're in a town and you take your sword out, if there's somebody, if you're standing in front of somebody stronger than you, they'll tell you to put it away and take their own sword out immediately. If you're stronger than them, they'll just like say, they'll be all worried and say, okay, you won, I don't want to fight. And this could be like the same person giving you two different reactions in the different time in the game as you progress.
Okay, it does sound very in depth.
Yeah, like the game
hate
awesome
RPGs because
What?
Well, I'll tell you, I hate them because they take forever. But usually, the method that you do things is boring. Like it doesn't react how you expect it to. It's just linear, like rail based game stuff. I hate those. Like they're boring. This does sound interesting because it's in depth and it actually responds to what you're doing in a way that is rational and would be something you expect, not based on like terrible game systems, but like based on what reality would happen.
Oh, and the game actually has an interesting story too.
I mean, I might give it a shot as far as like just trying it out. But as far like I'm not an RPG guy anyway. But I might.
It costs. Unfortunately, it only works on Windows. But I'm sure you could get it to work.
Why are we talking about this again?
Because it's awesome.
OpenMW works on Linux.
Because OpenMW works on Linux, and if you haven't played Morrowind, you should give it a shot. But this game, it's called Gothic. It's $13.49 Canadian dollars on GOG, and let's see if it's in WineRPD.
I mean, I'm not anti, using what you have to kind of thing. Like I pretty much always use Linux, but I don't really care if other people don't.
Well, I checked this up because I don't have Windows anywhere, and I typically just don't feel I can't be bothered to install. It has gold on GOG, or I mean on Wine.
Yeah, that's not bad.
I probably will never get platinum just because the game engine is so buggy, like can't get work. Somebody should make Open Gothic. Like, really, like if someone's looking for a project, and you don't want to make another open Elder Scrolls game, Open Gothic, I'd be all for it.
It sounds like a fun game.
It is. And it really makes you feel like you progress. Like when you first start the game, almost anything can kill you. Like if you stumble upon the weakest creature in the game, you can probably kill it. If there's two of them at the very beginning, they will kill you. but it makes you appreciate the progress. It's not just, you know, the number that goes up. Your strength went up, your skill in like sword fighting went up by 5 points. It's not just a number. Like you can actually genuinely feel that you got a lot stronger since the game started.
Yeah. I mean, that'd be interesting, but like, I don't know. Yeah, I might give it a shot at some point, but you know, I do have a Windows build, sort of. I have a separate hard drive that has Windows on it.
I mean, if you want to get into RPG games, like I could talk about this for hours, as I have for the last, you know, whatever.
At least 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly though. I was looking at I meant to look at what time you started to see how long the medium version was, and then I totally lost track of when it started. I don't remember when it started. But
yeah, I should have a RPG corner, RPG and City Skylines corner in the show.
Maybe. I mean, if something happens in OpenMW, like significantly, we can talk about that for sure.
Well, they never do. What they do that's kind of nice is every time they have like a release that adds a few features, they have a video, actually 2 YouTube videos. One that talks about the updates to the game, and one that talks about the tooling that they have for modders.
That's cool. If they do that, how often do they do those releases? How often are the releases?
Let's see. So the latest was on the 1st, and before that,
like I've covered OpenMW on other things. I might have covered it on the first episode way back when.
Yeah, so they went, the previous release was at the end of 0.42 was on the 1st of August. 0.41 was 27th of December. So they take a while.
Ooh, okay.
But I mean, just with mods and everything, you could probably have something to talk about every week.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to focus on an individual game because then it becomes like, I don't know, it gets dominated by one topic, and I don't want to dominate by any topic. Like that's why if you look at like in the show,
I was just joking with the open Morrowind corner.
Right, I know, but I'm saying like as far as like gaming, you could totally like submit games that I don't know, like as I don't pay attention to RPG updates or anything.
See, I kind of have a weird, like if you want to do gaming news, you have to focus on like what's going on, you know, on the like new games. I play like weird stuff, right? I mean, Morrowind is like what, 15 years old now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if there's an update to the engine and stuff, for sure. Then there's other, or like cool mods that are new or big updates or something. That's fine too. I mean, I don't mind.
I mean, even with like the modding community is focused on like big projects like Tamriel Rebuild, so that only gets updates like, you know, every once in a while, and it's not like anything significant.
Well, I mean, there's a show every week, so there's plenty of time to put one in at any point, you know. So well, I mean, every week thus far, starting last week. Like there's a lot of like I pay attention to a lot of different types of games. Like I'll cover platformers and first person shooters and other things, and including RPGs. It's just I'm not going to be covering them like extensively because I don't. As far as RPGs goes, I don't play them, so I have no idea. Like some of these games I've played that's in the show. Like for example, oh crap, I should have mentioned this. I didn't get the show out soon because there's only there's a limited time on one of the articles or one of the items, which is the BioShock Infinite sale. Like I've played that game and it's awesome.
It is actually a really good game.
Yeah.
It's super linear though.
It is linear, but like I mean, the purpose of the story is fine. It's like it's not an RPG really, and I don't mind.
No, it isn't.
I don't mind linear games. Like it just as long as if you're gonna force me to play a linear game, if the story makes it worth it, I'm totally fine with it. And BioShock Infinite does, but also the gameplay is probably better than the story. I think the most important thing of BioShock is the gameplay, especially the interaction with Elizabeth. Like you're in the middle of a battle and you run out of ammo, and then Elizabeth throws you a gun, and you're like, "Holy crap, that was awesome!"
Like the first time this happened to me,
Yeah.
like I was like, "Oh, this game is awesome! Like this is good!" Like the first time this happens to me, like early on, and like, "Oh, this is going to be a really good experience."
Yeah, exactly. As soon as the first time it happens, you're like, holy crap, the AI is awesome. Like the person you're escorting isn't just this worthless, annoying thing that you have to randomly go back. Oh, you're stuck on a wall. I'll come and pick you up. It's a character that actually helps you and through like fights with you, and it's such a awesome idea. Like in the experience of the first time where she throws you the gun, you're like. At least me, I was like, what? It's like, this is amazing. And then it just continues to be like such a good game. And the fact that it's right now on sale, like 75% off, people should totally get it.
Yeah,
so I gotta finish
definitely.
But there are a bunch of games. Like I got a game that was I realized an issue of doing a weekly show. Sometimes news happens during the week that I can't cover because it's very limited. Like there was a game that went on sale that was for free. Oh, Shadow Warrior was available for free for one day on like last Tuesday. And I tweeted about it, but that's really all I can do. And I'm not going to cover it because it is like, hey, it was on sale. Who cares, right?
Yeah, I actually installed it, and I should maybe try to play and see if it's actually any good.
What?
Shadow Warrior.
Oh yeah, I got it too. It looks fun, especially the katana fighting. That looks cool.
Yeah, it looks super gory and fun.
Yeah, there was a section. They made a video, the underappreciated things of Shadow Warrior, and it's like a bunch of little silly things that they were talking about. And one of the things was, maybe you don't like the idea that your blade is covered in blood all the time. Well, there's a mechanism for cleaning your blade. It's like fantastic. Welcome to the stream, Almighty Ohm and Thomas Traeger. That can't be right. I'm probably saying that wrong because
Traeger.
Yeah, I think Traeger, but like the umlaut makes me think that it's a different than what I would expect.
You're American. You're not supposed to pronounce names right.
I know, but I want to. I know what an umlaut is. Thank you.
What are they? Call me.
I'm an honorary.
No, but see, now I'm kind of thinking, what kind of just as kind of a not just for you, but in general, like if I wanted somebody to get like open up to this genre of RPGs, what kind of game I would recommend? I don't think like if you don't play RPGs, I don't think I would recommend Gothic to start with because it's really, really good, but because it's an old game, some of it, like just the mechanism of it, is kind of aged.
Sure, but
so you kind of have to deal with that.
I can tell you the answer. It's Borderlands. Like the first,
No.
yes, because if they like first-person shooters, if you want to introduce them to the idea of RPG and like collecting loot and upgrading their stuff and all this other stuff, Borderlands is the best option because
I think
it's only a part of the
because
game. It's not
I
the
want
game.
a game that's an RPG first and anything else second. So not like Borderlands is a first-person shooter with RPG elements.
Okay, I see.
Right,
In that
I want
case, I have no
I
idea.
want a game where you can create your own character and then build it up, not pick one from like the selection of few and then do whatever.
WWE
So-
2K17. You can make your own character for sure. Thomas said ultra short RPG is Xenotic. Are there
Yeah.
RPG stuff? in-
No, there's no.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
RPG.
I didn't think so.
I'm kind of thinking Pillars of Eternity. It works on Linux. It's really good. Like really, really good. The story's really good, even though it takes a little while to like start going. But once it gets going, you like I was hooked on the story of Pillars of Eternity. I was hooked on some of the side quests. Like that's how well written everything in this game is.
You're not helping your case with it. It took a while to get to the good part of the story.
Well, I mean, it's okay. So here's the thing, like because it's a fairly like there's a little bit of exposition that's required because of how the world works. Like the world has its own mythology. It doesn't like really borrow much from like how a lot of like you see that a lot of that in Morrowind. They borrow from like existing stuff like Greek mythology that you will be familiar with, right?
Okay, yeah.
So like once you notice the references, even though things have different names, you just get like, or in Skyrim it's Norse mythology, right? And like you kind of get that by
sure
because you've been exposed to it before. Like Pillars of Eternity has like its own world, its own mythology, its own like idea of spirituality, and it requires a little bit of exposition. And I say it because of that. And I guess I kind of said it wrong. It doesn't take a while if you focus on the main quest line for a little bit. That exposition will not take long at all. But I'm the kind of person who like explores every corner of every cave.
I'm also the kind of person who explores everything. That's
Then
the problem.
that's-
That's the problem with me in RPGs. If it takes a while, I get bored. Like I explore, but
See,
I get
that's the
bored.
thing. In this game, the side quests. So if you ignore the main quest line for a little bit, the side quests are really good. So just play for that too. The only issue I have with this game, and it's not like a big issue, big problem, it costs $50, and then on top of it, there's like $30 worth of DLCs. But it's worth it because, like, okay, here's the thing.
I'll look at a trailer. How about that?
It's okay.
I'll look at a playthrough, like a little bit of a playthrough someone done, like a let's play or something, maybe. Like I don't like games that take forever. I don't mind games that are a long time, but the games that take forever to get interesting. Like
my first playthrough was about 50 hours, and I once I got to like the point where the main quest line like really ramps up, I couldn't do side quests because I wanted to see how the game ends, because it's pretty intense.
That's cool. I mean, as far as putting it exploring,
for $50 we're talking $1 an hour for entertainment. That's not bad. And like I started replaying this game again recently, so like I'll probably get it down to like 30 cents an hour. Oh,
well,
fun.
to be fair, there are other games that you could spend a lot of hours and a lot less money. So, depends. Like, for example,
Yeah.
Rocket League. It's
Yeah,
awesome.
but in Rocket League, you are doing the same thing over and over, and you just get better at the Rocket League, right?
Well, yeah, but the fact that the
with
game changes with you as you get better. You play different people at different skill levels, and every match is completely different. It's the same mechanics, yes, but like the gameplay is different. The everything, the way everything works is different. Like there are different maps with shapes and stuff. Like overall, it's a very the game has a lot of variety, and it's got an amazing amount of playback ability.
Yeah, but you don't have the moral dilemmas.
That's true.
Of
Well,
RPG
I mean,
games.
that's not necessarily true because there's a chat room where you can talk to people during the gameplay. So the moral dilemma is to be or not to be toxic.
Well, the answer is 99% of the time be toxic.
That is usually what happens in that. I don't do that much, but it is very common that people do. Like it's very shocking. I've had a time where I would be like super nice to someone, like who scored on me, and I'm like nice shot to them. They're like super surprised that I'm polite about it. I was like, it is what it is. Like I'm not gonna be able to win every single game, so that's fine. In the chat room, Liberty Paul said that Tom Clancy's The Division is the first RPG he's ever played.
That's bad. Like I don't know. I don't. The Division is not. I think I've never played it, so I'm gonna put that disclaimer first. But it looks for me like the Division is as much of an RPG as Borderlands is. It's not. It has RPG elements, but it's not an RPG first.
Yeah, I've seen people do live streams that like let's plays of that, and it did not really seem RPG. Like it had some stuff, but it was like it didn't seem like it was RPG based at all. It seemed similar to Borderlands, as you said, although more like grounded in reality stuff. Which I think that's like the best thing about Borderlands is that it's so unique and the story is so awesome, and the bad guy of the game is amazing. Like you hate him. Like you legitimately think he is a jackass. But at the same time, he is funny and ruthless, and it's weird. He's like one of the best villain characters I've ever seen. Obviously not the best because Joker's the thing. But still.
See, the best villains aren't villains.
Yeah. I mean, he is a villain. He is straight up a villain. Like he will kill people just because he feels like it or it makes him laugh. Like he is a villain. But he's also funny. He's also like likable. And he'll say things that you're like disturbed by, but at the same time they're funny. And you just kind of like dismiss it. But what's hilarious is in the game, the characters that are on your side are like, "Don't believe him. He's a bad guy." And it's like, yeah, duh. Like, why do you have to think you'd have to tell me that? His face is not his face. He took someone else's face and stapled it onto his head. He's a bad guy. You don't have to tell me that.
See, I want a game where the villain or the antagonist is not really a villain. Where once you learn about the antagonist's motivations, you realize that he's not a bad guy.
X-Men.
You and him just have conflicting interests.
X-Men.
What?
There's an X-Men game.
Oh, you're going to talk about what, Magneto or something?
Yeah, Magneto is pretty much that. Although actually,
Yeah, but you could argue that
Professor,
he's a good villain.
well, he is kind of a villain. Also, Professor X is kind of a villain too. So, never mind.
The only thing I can think of really is like the antagonist in Princess Mononoke in the movie.
Yeah, I haven't seen that. I know what you're talking about, but I haven't seen it.
I mean, you should watch it. It's really good. But
yeah, I used to not be an anime person, and then I watched a few
see,
things. that were
I don't really
amazing.
like. I can hardly classify.
It is anime. It is.
Yeah, but see, that's the thing. I think like we need a special genre just for Hayao Miyazaki's work because
He's the same guy who made Ghost in the Shell, right?
No, it's the same guy who made Spirited Away
Oh, Spirited Away.
and Howl's Moving Castle.
Yeah, I did see Spirited Away. That was good.
I mean, Spirited Away is awesome.
Like I would say that. I mean, it is anime. I think
Spirited Away. Whenever I talk about suspension of disbelief and like creating a suspension of disbelief in your viewer or the player of a game, I always bring up Spirited Away because nothing did suspension of disbelief better than Spirited Away.
interesting. I don't remember the.
I mean,
it's been a while.
Watch it. Like, wait until you forget about this conversation and then watch it. Like, like download Spirited Away, put it on your desktop, and wait until you forget why you did it. Because I want you to forget about this conversation. And
Well,
then
is it on Netflix? That's more important.
I don't know. If it is, it may not be because it's Disney has publishing rights to it.
Oh, okay.
But like, it took me a while for it to click in my head. But it takes
Discord
so
has
little.
Sorry, I was reading the chat.
It took so little for me to completely just go, oh yeah, this world with flying, with kids turning into dragons, and like this old lady who's a witch, and this monster with no face and just a mask running around and being full of garbage. That could totally exist. Yeah. But you don't question anything that happens there because everything, despite the fact being so absurd and crazy and weird, just fits together so seamlessly. You have no problem just saying, "Oh yeah, that's happening now," even though it's not explained why it's happening. It's just these are the rules of this world, and you're okay with it.
Okay, I mean, I'm definitely I'll watch it again. It's been like well over a decade since I watched it. I might not even remember everything about it. I just remember liking it. That's all.
Yeah, I've watched it multiple times. I don't know, like
in the chat room,
anything by Hayao Miyazaki.
Yeah, I've seen a few that are pretty good. I remember seeing a few. I don't remember a bad movie that he's made. And I've seen a lot of them, but I don't remember most of them because they were a long time ago. In the chat room, Almighty Ohm, I think it's Ohm. Games I am fine with giving up or even using Windows, but apps like Discord and Twitch chat without a desktop client for Linux is more frustrating. Discord has a desktop Linux app. Twitch, not so much. However, there is GNOME Twitch, which is basically the same thing. Like, is kind of what you're talking about. Although, and it's not made by GNOME, I don't think. It's just like, they just call it GNOME Twitch because they use the GNOME stack. But it's pretty good. It has chat support. It has subscriber emoticon support and all that stuff, and like full watching support, following, all that good stuff. So in a way, there are apps for both of those. And Discord has a official one. Liberty Paul M said he tried to play The Witcher 3 and got bored, which is interesting because I heard it has an amazing story.
I've tried playing the first Witcher and I got bored, even though I'm a fan of the books. And
Well, I bought Witcher 2 and I haven't played it yet, but I hope it's not boring.
yeah, I think it's. You know what? If you want an action RPG that's really good, play Gothic, especially if you already know you like action RPGs.
Well, I don't know that. If you want a fantastic multiplayer game that anybody could enjoy, Golf with Friends. It's pretty good.
Also, you need to have friends to play it. I can't.
Not
meet those
actually.
system
No,
requirements.
you can go online and play with some streamers. You can do that. I actually did that one time. I had a few people playing with me, and then they all wanted to get off, and I was like, okay, fine. Then I just saw someone had a name. The name of their channel or their game was Twitch Stream, and I was like, well, why not? See what happens. And now I'm on his friends list in Steam and play multiple games with him.
Liberty Paul. If you like fantasy themed literature and you haven't read the Witcher books already, I strongly recommend them. Like I tried the first Witcher game. I know it's very different from the later ones, but the books are just awesome. The books are.
And if you want a game that's action packed and has a lot of amazing storytelling, Race the Sun. I mean, it is action packed. That part's true. Not at all story though. No story at all. But still, it's a really good game. There needs to be multiplayer, like a battle where you can try to mess each other up. That'd be awesome.
Oh, when you can push each other into obstacles.
Yeah.
That would be awesome.
That'd be awesome. And like you have your own path, but then you could like you know how in the beginning of the game you had to like veer all the way to the left to do some paths. Like you'd have to like veer into them, so you're like risking your own death in order to mess with them. Like that would be great.
Yeah, I would assume the Witcher books will have DRM on it just because of publishing rights and so on.
Probably. Most of the time, those things do. It's really easy to put DRM on like ebook or something like that. So kind of makes sense. I didn't talk about an application I was going to because I missed. I had it in the notes this week, but I didn't talk about it because they. I missed it a couple weeks, like their release. And I thought it was new, but it wasn't. Technically, it wasn't this week, so I didn't put it in. It's called Bookworm. It's an ebook and comic book reader. It's really cool. So DRM is bad, but DRM is also good. And by that I mean Direct Rendering Manager inside the kernel. Because there's a funny, a lot of people like, I got sent a message on Telegram. Is like DRM is in the Linux kernel. I was like, yeah, but that means Direct Rendering Manager. Fantastic naming for your initialism.
Well, I was looking for stuff on Amazon. Apparently, there's a Witcher comic book now.
Nice. I mean, Witcher 3 got super popular, so I'm not really surprised by that.
I mean, see, normally it takes like years for people to come out with like an entire fleshed out world that feels new, right? And Andrzej Sapkowski has been working on the Witcher series for years now, and so the way it started was the first two books that they're all considered part of the series are just short stories. It's not that with the third book uh, that the actual story of The Witcher that I think the game's fall begins.
Mm-hmm.
But like I recommend that if you are going to read the short stories first, because one, they're really well written. Two, they kind of expose you to like the world of The Witcher, and it's gonna feel new to like most people because it doesn't just follow like your typical elves and wizards kind of fantasy world. It borrows a lot from like the like Slavic mythos, which is like really cool and really enhances the world. And once the novel begins, it's set in this like super complex political background, and like there's like a ton of stuff going on, and yeah, it's just super cool.
Nice. I mean, I want to play the games first, but is Witcher 2? I mean, is Witcher 1 on Linux or just 2? I think it's just
2. I think it's just 2.
That's disappointing. But, it is what it is. It is what it is. So guess how many hours I got in Rocket League?
600?
Mm-mm. Higher.
Really? Are you over 1,000?
Yep.
Really?
Yep.
Well, how much is it?
1,041.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm at 913 Counter-Strike.
I'd be much better if it was 2,000. Paul asked that in the chat. I am still pretty good at Rocket League, but not 2,000 hours good. What's funny is that I was thinking that I have way too many hours I should be better than I am, and then I started like playing. I started trying different things that I tried in the beginning of the game, different training modes and stuff, and then I remember being really terrible at them. It was really hard. And it was super easy. Like, it was nothing. So, I guess I am better than I thought. And I've convinced people to play it, other streamers, other Linux people, like Linux YouTubers. Big Daddy Linux, I convinced him to play it, and he's now addicted to it. And he convinced DOS Geek to play it, and he's now addicted to it. I take credit for that indirectly, but still. Like, it's such a good game. Although the only problem with it is that the skill level development in that game, it's a big learning curve. Like, it's not really a big learning curve in the sense of, like, if you're good at these kinds of games, like, you'll get used to it. Like, that's fine. It's the discrepancies between skill levels. Like, for example, I'm like probably the lowest of the highest tier or highest of the low tiers. Like, I'm like not right in the middle, but like above average, I'd say. And like when you get people to join, like the first time they join, they want to play with you because you convince them to play the game. They have absolutely no business playing in the levels you're going to play with. So like you'd have to have two accounts. One where you play with them in a account that doesn't have your ranking, and then you could just play whatever they play, and you don't put much effort in. You just kind of like play around with it, and just enjoy the experience with playing with your friend kind of thing. But if you play with your account, they're going to be pulled into like an incredibly insane level of play that they have no business being there. So it's a situation where you know, when you convince someone. It's kind of like how Counter-Strike is. Like, if you are very good at that game and you bring someone into play the level they rank against you, like, it would be awful. And I've experienced that. It's pretty awful. Because I'm awful at that game. But it's the same with Rocket League.
We should maybe organize something that maybe we'll pick preferably some open source game, like I don't know, even if it's Assault Cube or something stupid like that, or Sonotic, and just play it after the live show next week.
Yeah, that's fine. We can do that instead of talking for another hour and a half.
I think we can still talk and play.
Well, I mean, I would talk. Yeah.
Now I just noticed that YouTube's broken. You know how we can have a dark theme, and
the live chat is not dark.
And well, live chat is dark, but Thomas just posted something in black text, and I can't see it unless I select it.
Oh, you're saying the built-in dark theme that YouTube made?
Yeah.
Yeah, I changed it with a stylish theme, so it did change it to me. So I see it as white text on black background, so it looks fine.
See, all of it for me is white text on black background, except for what Thomas just posted.
That's interesting.
Odd.
When Thomas, you said it's only games. Like, what are you talking about? Like,
probably. Why do you have to be mad? It's only games.
Yeah, but I wasn't saying I'd be mad. I think he was referring to like the discrepancy between skill. And it's not that it's only games. It's my point was not that it's just a game. My point was that when you convince someone to play and then they play with you, it's not fun for them because they're going to be utterly destroyed. So unless you can carry them entirely and you be better than the other people you're playing, which is unlikely in every any game that's competitive like that, they're gonna have a bad experience. Like, I've had a bad experience where I play with friends in Counter-Strike and I get obliterated because I have no business being in that level, which makes it not fun for me. Like, I've played that game by myself with random people online, and it was fun. But I play with friends, and I'm playing like they've played thousands of hours, and I've played 7. So it's definitely not a fair experience. So I'm saying the same thing happens in Rocket League, where like I actually told people every time I tell people that I convince to play, I tell them that play without me for a couple hours or at least an hour and see if you like it. If you don't, you can refund it or whatever, of course. But like, just see if you like it. And everybody so far has like played it and go, "This is an amazing game. This is so fun." Like, it sounds dumb because conceptually it's kind of dumb. Soccer with cars, it's ridiculous. But when you play it, it's so fun. And you got to play it without whoever convinced you to play it first to get the feel of like, because they'll put you into games where you're playing people who are at the similar level and it's not that big of a deal. Whereas if you were just starting out and you play with me, it's going to be a mess. Like, because they're going to be putting you against, and they don't try to find like this mid tier. They don't say this guy is rank 5, this guy is rank 0. We'll try to get like a 2.5 or a 3. They don't do that because it's not fair to those people, because the rank 5 will crush them. So what they do is you play the same level you are, or maybe one below. Like, for example, like if I was rank 5, they would make the new person play 2 rank 5s or at least 1 5 and 1 4. Like, it's just not close. And so it's just not a fair experience to first play this game. And now, once that person's played like 10 hours of the game and gets the fundamentals down, then they could kind of be able to play in that level, and they wouldn't be able to win, but they might be able to, like, enjoy it. It wouldn't be like a complete utter destruction. Like, I've actually played a game where I've tested it where I said, here, play this, let me, after you play a couple times, a few hours, let me know. And, if you're addicted to it or not. And then I played with them, and it was fine. Like, I could carry them enough. And because they weren't doing things that were so bad that it would break my style. They if we had played in the beginning, that would happen, which also happened too. I'm not going to say who, but I've played a game with someone who had just had the game for like 45 minutes, and they just wanted to play with me to see what would happen. And I was like, I can tell you what's going to happen, and it's going to be a disaster. And it absolutely was, because they were not prepared to play at those levels, and it was just but thankfully they had played the game without me prior, at least a little while, so they had already been addicted to it. But still, because it's fun, because when I've gone back and watched people who I've convinced to play, who start like doing videos or streaming or something, and they're playing at tiers that are 6 months ago for me or something, or more, more. And it's just fun to watch it, because it's like, just to see the the level. You're like, I remember where I was at that point at one time. Like, I remember those days. And what's amazing about it is that Rocket League is you're basically playing soccer. Like, it feels like you're playing soccer, because you have to learn the way to dribble the ball with your car, how to shoot it, how to pop it up and, get it over the other person and get it around them. And like, it's not just like a simulator like most soccer games are. Like, it feels like you're playing a sport. Not necessarily soccer, obviously, but you're playing a sport.
What I don't like about Rocket League, that it doesn't really provide me with a fun way to be bad at it without frustration.
Well, I mean, you just acknowledge that you're going to be bad. Like, you're absolutely 100% guaranteed to be bad at this game the first second you play it. Like, no one can be good at this game immediately, because it is a sport, essentially. Like, it's an e-sport, but it's like one of the first games that is like legitimately you are playing a sport. And like, it's just, you're not going to be good at any sport you just start trying. So if you play with people who are good, it's not going to be a good experience. But what's beneficial is that in Rocket League, there are techniques that if you learn these techniques in the beginning, you will learn quickly, and you will get past the curve very quickly, and you will dominate a lot of people at those levels. Like, for example,
underestimate my lack of hand-eye coordination.
Maybe. But there was a guy who I convinced to play the game, and he was not good, obviously, because no one's good in the beginning. And then after he played a couple hours, I was like, "Sir, I'll give you some tips now. Like, once you get the hand of like how to play it and stuff, I'll give you some techniques that you can use to play in those levels that will probably let you dominate. If you learn how to do the techniques properly and you put the effort into actually learning them, you will probably be really good at it and you'll enjoy it. Like, you wouldn't ever beat me in it using these techniques, but like, you more than likely will use these, and they will make your game better at those levels." And I taught him about 3 things. There's like 100 that I could teach about it, but I taught him about 3 things, and he goes back and says it was awesome. It was like fantastic. It made it even much better. And then once he gets those down, I teach him another stuff. So, like, there's certain techniques and certain ways you hit the ball that at lower levels they have no ability to do and no expectation that's going to happen. So if you can learn how to do it, you can dominate that level. So I went back and like when he plays with me, he's playing at a level that he can't handle, and it's obvious that he can't. But when I've watched him play at those levels, like a video of him playing against those other people the same level as him, he does very well, like surprisingly well. Like I like, winning by multiple goals. So it's really interesting that with a little bit of guidance, that the game is not as bad as it seems like in the beginning. Like when I first started playing the game, I wasn't like there. I didn't know anyone who was as good enough to teach me this kind of stuff, and so I had to learn it all like through YouTube videos and stuff like that. But it's still an amazingly fun game. Like it's ridiculously fun. I don't know. I'm talking about it too much, probably.
Yeah, you're worse than I am with OpenMW.
I think it's about the same.
Yeah, I tried Rocket League, and honestly, I found it frustrating. Maybe because I was playing with people significantly better than I was, and it just wasn't fun.
Yeah, like for example, okay. Who did you play? Who did you play at all by yourself and just random?
Yeah, I tried a little bit, and I don't know, kept losing and just I don't know. I tried it when like first came out on Linux.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I would say give it a shot in the sense of like just play it with only random people for like 30 minutes. And then just ask me and I'll show you some more techniques about how to do stuff. And then you go back and play for like another 30 minutes or an hour and see if it changes your experience. Because that'd be a good test to someone who, played it but doesn't like it. Can I give them tips to make it so that the game is more enjoyable? Like, I would really want to know that if that's possible. Because for me, it was enjoyable very quickly. But I had someone I was playing with who wasn't like very good. They were just decent and like okay at the game. So the level discrepancy wasn't that huge. So when I convince people, it's hard because the discrepancy is gigantic. And like the person who got me to play the game and like I played with at the beginning, who's not that good, is basically at the same tier that they were at the time because they don't play it that much. So like I'm probably twice as good as them now, maybe more. So it's like the dynamic has completely switched, where they want to play with me because they want to play in the tiers that are like crazy to them because they're good enough to play in there, not good enough to like dominate or anything, but like good enough to at least see what it's like. Good thing is that happened. The dogs barking didn't happen during the show. That'd have been awful. But anyway, if you're willing to try it, Frestel, I would be definitely willing to help you like learn techniques and stuff. Because there are a few techniques that are like simple and easy to do. That
see, at first I would have to learn probably how to get good at actually like predicting. Where the ball is going to end up.
No, the prediction thing is later on. Like that's also a skill. Like in the beginning, there are things you can do that they're not going to be able to do. They're not even going to think of, so that it'll make it easier for you. And like the prediction thing, like now I can predict it almost every time. Like sometimes I'll jump too early and then my prediction was right, then the ball hits a different angle or someone taps it and then I'm completely out of position and it is just gone. Like that happens a lot because I'm I don't know, trigger happy, I guess, to jump and do aerial stuff now. But I don't know. I think that the prediction thing is like, because that takes effort and time to get used to doing too. Because the physics in the game is not like real physics. I mean, there are some real elements to it, but like there are some things that are like really weird. Like for example, if you jump in the air or you're flying in the air and you do a front flip, like there's a particular type of flip, not just like a regular one, but a particular type of flip, it will cancel out gravity, which is, you know, not reality at all. But in this game, like it will mess with you really early, like, so you got to learn to like deal with that aspect of the game. But there's a bunch of tips that are like just, you know, simple tips that could, like that one's actually a more complex one, but like there's a bunch of simple tips. Like there's this thing, there's the ball cam, and if you want to line up a shot or you want to dribble the ball, like in lower levels, if you can learn to dribble in lower levels, you will absolutely dominate, like guaranteed. And the best way to do that is to turn off ball cam, because as soon as the ball gets like slightly off angle to where you're going, ball cam on will just completely destroy your camera and your sense of direction. So if you turn it off, it makes it so much easier to control it. And just that one tip would make people have a better experience in the beginning, I think. But anyway, it's 3 hours and 15 minutes so far in this stream. The show is about an hour and I think 5, maybe 10 minutes. I don't know. So we've been streaming like an extra stream for at least another hour and a half, 2 hours. So I think I'm going to end the stream here and go play some Rocket League. I need to
I'm already playing Morrowind.
Well, oh yeah, but you're not streaming. You're just talking. I'm streaming, so I have to like cancel the stream and then like.
I could start OBS and take over.
You'd have to access to my stream key. No, thank you, sir.
Well, what's the harm?
Yeah, what's the harm?
What could go wrong?
Here, I'll put it in the YouTube chat then. Let's see what happens.
Actually, I think I have OBS installed.
It's awesome. OBS is actually really fantastic. Like, it's so easy and so powerful to use. I don't know. It's fantastic. But I need to get like a capture card because I want to stream Rocket League, but Rocket League is intensive to the resources as far as CPU and RAM go, and I can't really do it. Like, I've streamed a little bit, but it's not, the quality of the graphics aren't that good, and it's just kind of awkward. And in order to get it to the part where it's like reasonably watchable, it lowers my frame rate to play, which kind of sucks. So I'd like to be able to like play how I want, stream the game to a video capture device, and then put the capture device to the streamer, like to OBS and stuff. And that would be awesome. But the only capture device I know of that works well in Linux is like $250, $300, something like that. So I'm not really that excited to get that.
Yeah, I care very little for this streaming stuff. I mean, you know, that's the dream, so we can just play whatever game you want all day. And
actually, it's not whatever game you want. It's whatever the streamers want, what the watchers want you to play.
Yeah.
So it's not even that.
I guess like when a game like PUBG comes out and everybody wants PUBG, you kind of have to play PUBG whether you like it or not.
That's true.
Unless you're like, when you're a streamer known for one game, then you have to play that one game because people might not want to watch you play anything else.
There's a guy who plays Rocket League and is a YouTuber for Rocket League, and he's also a streamer somewhat. But he's a streamer, but he's not like a Rocket League streamer. He's a Rocket League YouTuber. And there's so many times where people will try to get him to play Rocket League on stream because they want to watch him play it live, that he made his bot like explain why he doesn't want to play Rocket League automatically when they say the word Rocket League. It's like, I enjoy this game, but you can't play it forever. You can be burned out on this game. And like the next day you're wanting to play it again, but like, after you get burnt out on that game for a little while, like, you get at least a few hours to go back. And people were like, he would just finish playing the game on a stream and they were like, hey, you should play Rocket League. He's like, no, I need to play something that won't frustrate me because of my own mistakes. Because I think the only bad thing about the game is that if like there isn't any leniency if you make a mistake. Like if you screw up, it's a sport basically. So if you screw up, there's no telling what's going to happen. But it's probably bad. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and stop the stream. It's 3 hours and 20 minutes long. And I'm going to have to edit an hour out of it to use it for the show. So, at least this time we didn't go over on the show, and the show was pretty quickly streamed. I think the amount of delay when I started the stream into when we started doing the show was only like maybe 5 minutes. So that's good. A mobile all-in-one podcast solution. I'm not sure what all-in-one podcast would be. Like, what do you mean? Like, I like Podcast Addict. It's a really good application for finding, listening, and keeping track of how much you've listened and stuff like that. I think the best thing about Podcast Addict, though, is that you can stream the data in podcasts, not necessarily have to download everything. You can download if you want to. So if you want to have like offline playback, but you can also just stream it so that it'll just play. But it saves your placement on the streams as well. So if like you can, instead of like putting storage on your phone, you can just, it'll say start the stream, then it like fast forwards or jumps to this part where it's saved in your metadata, and then starts from there. So it's really awesome. And it also has like speed control, so you can make it go faster if you want. And I have realized I never thought that I would want podcasts to go, 1.5, 1.7 times speed. I want to have like, the real time stuff. There are certain podcasts that I think are fantastic at real time, and then there's other podcasts that kind of drown on a little bit. So the 1.5 or 1.7 speed is fantastic. Like, it is such a good thing to have. Like, there's some people whose cadence, they just like slowly say words in their sentence like this.
I actually set up a Morrowind stream. Can you check if it's actually working?
Is it live? Is it live?
Yeah.
Is it live?
I posted the link to Discord.
Okay.
I'm not a mod on YouTube, so I can't post anything there. I can't post links there.
Okay.
I'm not a mod on YouTube, so I can't post anything there. Well, I can't post links there.
Probably should be. Okay, I do see it.
Does it actually play?
Okay, I do see it. It just did a loading screen. Now you're inside of some room.
Oh, I have the blue tint thing. How do you remove that? I can't even remember.
It is blue. Yeah. I don't know. Actually,
there's like
I've
a
never heard audio
capture
remove
method.
playouts. The last time you tried to stream a game, it was awful. So
Yeah.
have you like improved hardware or anything? Because this one's not that bad.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. This is completely different.
Okay, yeah, because this one's actually like reasonable. Like it's not like highest graphics or anything, but that's probably the game itself. It's just fine as far as like responsiveness. Because I remember that one stream you did for City Skylines was so slow, like 5-minute delay. But yeah, this one looks fine.
Oh, there we go. That should affect the blue tint issue.
We'll see. I haven't got it. Hasn't. Oh, there it is.
It's
Yep.
going to have like a few seconds delay.
Yeah. Is the
Okay,
graphics
so-
on your stream, is that just the game or is it like the resolution of the stream?
It's probably compressed crap.
Oh, okay. So the graphics actually look pretty good then.
Yeah, I actually have it modded with higher resolution textures. I just don't have the upload to stream in higher resolution.
Oh, okay. Because yeah, the graphics don't look that good, but like, the responsiveness of it is way better than the last time. So did you like replace your graphics card or what?
Graphics card, motherboard, CPU, memory.
Oh,
It's
everything.
basically. No, I still have the same hard drives.
Well, basically everything. Because I mean, hard drives are like one of the things that aren't as bad as to replace, but you replaced every core component that's,
Yeah.
that involves this.
So here's the bad part of Morrowind. Of course, this is going to be in Polish now because I bought this game back in Poland. So the journal, there is no like separation of quests. Like, oh, this is all the relevant information for this quest. No, you have a journal, and it's like, oh, this day I talked to this person, and she told me to go there and do this.
So they just kind of like sort of guide you, but they don't really guide you.
Yeah, so like if you picked up a side quest, like a week ago and did a bunch of stuff in between, and you want to find it, well, you just have to go back and read what's in your journal. And like, oh yeah, that was on that day, and I have to go there.
Okay.
Another thing that's bad.
Hold on a second. Andy Turfer said a thing in the chat room. Great show. Thanks, I'm glad you liked it. He said that my voice was not coming through very well. It was soft, but yours was loud and clear. So, is my voice loud in Discord or no?
I didn't hear you, but just fine in Discord.
Okay, so it is my streaming. The issue, I think, is because the microphone is not fully doesn't have full gain, but the soundboard has full gain. And I tried to match it sort of in the stream, but I'm gonna have to like do some more testing to make sure. Because the next stream, I'm gonna have to start a little early just so I can test the audio volumes. Or, maybe do it out of a stream because that might be better. I don't know. Whatever's. Anyway, I haven't actually closed the stream yet, and now it's an extra 8 minutes from when I said I was going to. So now I am going to close the stream, and thanks for watching, everyone who's still here, which is surprisingly a significant amount of people. I think it's 10 people are still watching. So I appreciate that. That is awesome. And
you can switch to my stream now.
Yeah, if you want, feel free. Watch more OpenMW. Was it Morrowind or OpenMW?
Well, it's technically both. It's Morrowind running on the OpenMW engine.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll link your stream if you want me to. I don't mind.
Sure.
Okay. So here we go. Here is his stream for his gaming. And there you go. And now I'm going to end the stream. And maybe get some sleep. I'm not sure. Or Rocket League. One of the two. Because I kind of... Never mind. Stayed up late. Didn't finish the show. I got to... Oh, no. I can't get sleep or play Rocket League. I got to finish the show and then release it so that it's still current. Anyway. All right. Thanks for stopping by. And hope you see you next time. And also, be sure to subscribe to the show or the channel, because I'm going to put more videos up this coming week that are not just this show. So be sure to do that. See you.